U.S. Department of Commerce will carry on this investigation cautiously and fairly, and refrain from taking unilateral restrictive measures on imported aluminum products. To this end, U.S. government is encouraged to conduct these proceedings in a balanced and transparent manner, and consider a broader range of global stakeholders' opinions, including the Chinese Aluminum Industry Association and individual companies who were not selected at this public hearing. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for that testimony. Does anyone on the panel have questions for the representative?
I do have a question. You mentioned that the government of China has proactively undertaken many measures to eliminate excess domestic aluminum production capacity. Could you give us some examples of those proactive steps the government has taken and what the results of that action has been so far?
Yes, we will submit a written report to the panel after this hearing.
Thank you. Good, I think we're ready. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Thank you. We are ready for our next speaker from the United Arab Emirates.
Secretary Ross, esteemed panelists, good morning. My name is Talal Al-Qaisi, and I'm appearing here today as part of the Trade and Commercial Office at the Embassy of the United Arab Emirates on behalf of the Ministry of Economy's submission recently. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this hearing and will use the few minutes allotted to me today to emphasize several points developed more fully in our written submission. The fundamental point I wish to convey today is that the UAE's exports of primary aluminum to the United States are one part of a robust, dynamic, and positive relationship between our two countries. The UAE exports only primary aluminum, which contributes significantly to the growing downstream US aluminum sector. From the UAE's perspective, this trading relationship enhances US economic and security interests. Please allow me to explain why. First, due to its fair trade policies, economic growth, and history of economic partnership with the US, the UAE is the largest export market for US origin goods in the Middle East and North Africa. Over the past decade, US exports to the UAE grew by 118%, with the US enjoying a $19 billion trade surplus with the UAE in 2016. This bilateral trade surplus, which benefits many US manufacturing industries, includes growing US exports of aircraft, space systems, satellites, electrical machinery, and electronics, as well as vehicles, nuclear energy technology, and many other higher value manufactured items. According to the UN Comtrade data, as detailed in our written submission, US exports to the UAE are 9 times higher by value than UAE exports to the US. Aluminum accounts for 27% of the UAE's exports to the United States, but only 3% of the value of US exports to the UAE. Moreover, some of the high-value US exports to the United States, such as GE-made power generation equipment, are purchased by our aluminum industry. The large US trade surplus with the UAE also reflects the UAE's purchases of US-made military hardware and technology. According to the Department's International Trade Administration, the UAE offers vast potential for US exporters. The UAE accounted for 6.4% of total US defense exports in 2015 and has one of the largest projected growth rates for US defense exports in the world. Second, this robust bilateral trade relationship is accompanied by strong bilateral investment ties. In fact, over 1,500 US firms have invested in the UAE, many of whom employ the UAE as a hub for their regional operations. Conversely, and according to data from Select USA, the UAE investments in the US are around $30 billion and support some of the most innovative US manufacturing industries. To cite just one major example, the UAE is 100% invested in Global Foundries, a manufacturer of advanced semiconductors in New York State, and DoD is a customer of Global Foundries as well on avionics and satellite systems for their semiconductors. Looking at the full picture of the economic ties between our two countries, the UAE has a trade relationship which supports jobs in every single US state. Aluminum supplied by the UAE industry to the US, value-added manufacturers around the country, is part of this robust and mutually beneficial economic relationship. Third, the bilateral trade and investment ties I've just summarized are further bolstered by US-UAE cooperation on a wide range of strategic and security initiatives. As categorized by the US Department of State, the US and the UAE enjoy strong bilateral cooperation on a full range of issues, including defense, non-proliferation, trade, law enforcement, energy policy, cultural exchange, while working together to promote peace and security, support economic growth, and improve educational opportunities in the region and around the world. In the security arena, the UAE is one of the US's critical partners in the region, providing essential support for US troops, aircrafts, and vessels operating in the Middle East. Indeed, Secretary of Defense Mattis was in the UAE just last month to finalize an updated defense cooperation agreement. During the past 25 years, the US and the UAE military forces have worked together on 6 military coalition actions, including the first Gulf War, Kosovo, Afghanistan, Libya, and recent operations in Syria and Iraq. US-UAE strategic cooperation extends to many other areas, including counterterrorism, anti-money laundering, enforcement, and nuclear non-proliferation. This is the mutually beneficial context for UAE aluminum exports to the United States. Finally, I want to briefly mention the connection between this investigation and the rules-based international trading system that the United States has worked so hard to promote, which has helped help so much in spurring global economic growth. As the department evaluates possible import restrictive measures in this investigation, I would respectfully ask it to consider compatibility of such measures with the WTO mutually agreed rules on when, how, and under what conditions WTO members may lawfully restrict trade. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I hope my comments are useful as the department formulates its findings and recommendations in this investigation.
Well, thank you for that thoughtful presentation. Are there any questions from the members of the panel? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So our next speaker is a representative from the Trade Mission at the Russian Federation.
Good morning. My name is Yuri Stegny. I'm Deputy Trade Representative of the Trade Representation of the Russian Federation in the USA. The Trade Representation of the Russian Federation in the USA on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation expresses its gratitude to the US Department of Commerce for the opportunity to take part in these public hearings. We would like to present briefly our comments regarding Section 232 investigation initiated by the US Department of Commerce to determine the effect of aluminum imports on American national security. Based on the principle that there are broad and narrow interpretation of the notion national security, we are of the position that under either international interpretation, Russian import do not and cannot threaten to impair US national security. We would like to know that Russian suppliers do not rely on unfair trade practices. There are reliable and competitive suppliers and operate fairly in the US and global market in the market condition. In 2002, Russia was recognized as a market economy country by the USA and the European Union, and since 2012, Russia has been a WTO member. Importantly, Russian aluminum industry is completely private-owned. The Russian government has never granted specific export subsidies or provided unfair financial contribution to Russian aluminum manufacturers aiming at their market expansion. Aluminum is an exchange trade commodity, and global market prices for aluminum are determined by the London Market Exchange on the basis of global supply and demand. We believe that the Department of Commerce should substantially narrow the approach on in this investigation and admit that the aluminum imports from Russia cannot harm US national security. Imports from Russia were not the cause of smelters closures in the USA. The main reason for such closures are high energy cost, high labor cost, the growth of secondary aluminum production. So any restrictive measures against foreign suppliers of aluminum from market economies cannot be justified and would only harm the American aluminum industry. We would like to emphasize that without imports, there would be a massive shortage of aluminum raw materials required in the US market by all sectors of the aluminum industry. Importantly, it should be noted that the Russian aluminum imports are not supplied directly for any US military purposes. So there is no any dependency of the American national security on the supplies of aluminum from Russia. We are convinced that Russian imports do not impair the capability of American industry to satisfy the defense needs of the country. The available data confirm that the national defense requirements for aluminum products are relatively low and can be fully satisfied by the US domestic industry. On the contrary, the availability of import unwrought aluminum from Russia enables continuous further development of high value-added aluminum production in the USA, which drives American economic development and allows the aluminum industry contribute about 1% of the US gross domestic product according to the Aluminum Association data. For the reason mentioned above, we believe that there is no need for the imposition of restraint of aluminum imports from Russia. Moreover, there is no threat or damage to the national security from Russian aluminum imports, and any restriction would cause injury to the wide range of US direct and indirect consumers, bring significant advance effect to the economic development. We believe that the trade in aluminum products between the US and Russia is mutually beneficial and should be supported and developed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the panelists?
Does the government of Russia have any specific proposals to address the global oversupply and overcapacity issue?
I'm sorry, I'm not authorized to answer this question.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Our next speaker from the European Aluminum Association.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary, distinguished members of the panel. I'm very honored to be invited to participate in that very important meeting. My name is Gerd Götz. I'm representing as Director General the European aluminium industry from upstream to downstream, recycling, primary production, rolling, extrusion, with more than 80 members with about 600 plants in 30 countries. A considerable number of our members operate production facilities in both Europe and the US. European aluminium shares the concerns of the US government regarding the significant Chinese aluminium overcapacity and its impact on the US and European industries, despite the healthy demand for aluminium worldwide. We, the European industry, believe that addressing the root causes of these problems requires continued joint efforts of the US, Canada, and Europe. Within the framework of the current investigation, we urge the US administration to take into account following elements. First, imports of aluminium products from Europe, in view of both their quantity and characteristics, do not constitute a threat to the US national security within the meaning of your statute. Although the percentage of US imports of aluminium has increased in the past years, the percentage originating from Europe has remained stable over the past decade. Europe accounts for a relatively modest part of US imports and supplies specialty, high-value-added products to US consumers. The vast majority of European imports have little to no link to US national security, but are largely used in commercial applications. In other words, the US is not dependent on European imports for its national security requirements, including national defense. Further, the European aluminium industry truly functions under market economy conditions and does not suffer from mass subsidization, government ownership, or excess capacity. Finally, Europe is a long-lasting military ally of the US and a fundamental player within NATO's alliance. Under these circumstances, it's clear that European imports do not threaten to impair the capability of US domestic industry to satisfy national security requirements. We call your government to refrain from targeting European imports with any potential measure associated with the Section 232 investigation. Our second point is that the American and European aluminium industries are strongly interlinked. We are truly united in our day-to-day business. Demand for aluminium products is global and supply is more and more structured globally, not regionally. Approximately 50 multinationals are members of both European Aluminium and the Aluminum Association and supply daily a vast majority of the entire aluminium value chain on both sides of the Atlantic. Together, they own approximately 80 production and manufacturing facilities in Europe and 75 in the US, employing a large number of American workers. These companies constitute a transatlantic ecosystem. Weakening the European side of their value chain will affect the US business. This would also impact innovation and research and development, which are essential for the development of advanced aluminum manufacturing and applications. Intercompany shipments are very common practice for these companies, and measures would also not be in the interest of US consumers, who could suffer adverse consequences in terms of material yield, product quality, material availability, and increased pricing. Third, let's talk about the nature of the major threat we are all facing. You will understand what I mean when I say that in our struggle, too, we are united. During my presentation in the USITC on the true underlying problem of Chinese overcapacity, we testified together with many of the parties in the room here today about the importance of having a global solution to this unsustainable global risk. The ongoing cooperation at G7 and G20 level is indispensable to address the root causes of the structural threat. This requires continued joint efforts between the US, Europe, and other like-minded governments. Moreover, we will continue to urge governments globally to address the effects of excess capacity on prices and quantities with traditional trade instruments, including through the WTO. The conclusion is clear. Continued joint efforts between the US and Europe are necessary to tackle the root causes of the global excess capacity and to secure balance in the US and European aluminium markets. We are concerned that restrictive actions based on the current 232 investigation will not provide the lasting solution needed by our markets and may have unintended negative consequences for integrated aluminium supply chains. In any event, European aluminium imports should not be the subject to proposed measures under the Section 232 investigation, since they do not represent a threat to US national security. With that, European aluminium remains open to continue to collaborate in this investigation for the interest of all our members, with particular interest in those that add value to our economies and societies on both sides of the Atlantic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Does anyone on the panel have questions?
Does the European Aluminum Association have specific proposals on how to deal with the global overcapacity issue?
Yes, we believe that the joint activities, as mentioned, with regard to a global solution, may be the best solution for the whole industry. We have an industry which is in growing demand, and from that perspective, we should be able to develop this industry in a thoughtful manner, playing with the same rules everywhere, which is today not the case.
I'm going to have to leave after this.
Thank you. We're ready for our next speaker, Mr. Scott.
Good morning. My name is Robert E. Scott. I'm a senior economist with the Economic Policy Institute. Thanks for holding this hearing. Imports threaten the entire domestic aluminum industry, which is today hanging on only by a thread. The threat is driven by the growth of excess capacity and overproduction in China. Chinese primary aluminum production capacity has increased by nearly 1,500% between 2000 and 2017, and China is responsible for 82% of the total increase in global aluminum capacity in this period. This growth has been fueled by massive government subsidies and other market-distorting practices. Chinese overcapacity has suppressed global aluminum prices, transmitting injury directly to domestic producers. Aluminum is a global commodity, and prices are primarily driven by total global supply and demand, regardless of where aluminum is produced, sold, or stored. The U.S. aluminum market effectively imports the adverse price and volume effects of China's excess capacity and production via changes in LME prices. Collapsing prices have decimated U.S. primary aluminum production, capacity, and employment. The LME market price of aluminum fell 39% between 2007 and 2016. I would note anecdotally that over this time, the price of a six-pack did not decline by 40%. In an industry with high fixed cost, and most domestic aluminum producers have not survived this prolonged, steady price collapse. Since 2018 of 23 domestic smelters have shut down, and more than 13,000 good domestic production jobs have disappeared. Despite a slight recovery in prices in early 2017, U.S. primary aluminum producers are barely surviving. The threat to U.S. national security posed by aluminum imports is significant. The domestic industry is losing its ability to develop and supply products for U.S. defense and critical infrastructure applications. Instead, the downstream U.S. producers are becoming increasingly dependent on unreliable sources of imports from the Middle East, Russia, and elsewhere. If current trends persist in time of war or other national emergency, the U.S. would find itself dependent on unstable import supplies. For these reasons, it is critical that Section 232 relief is broad. Specifically, relief should be structured in a manner that allows as much primary aluminum production as possible to restart in order to maintain critical aluminum capabilities and prevent reliance on unstable supply. Moreover, relief must account for the fact that because so much U.S. production has been shut down due to China's market-distorting practices, some imports are needed in the U.S. market. As such, a contiguous source of stable supply, Canada, should be excluded from relief while establishing broad, across-the-board restrictions on imports of both primary and downstream aluminum products. According to market reports, the U.S. consumed approximately 5.3 million tons of primary aluminum in 2016. Nearly 80% of that consumption was serviced by imports, much of that from Canada. Less than 1 million tons were supplied by U.S. producers. Because aluminum is a global commodity, excluding Canada from relief, it would likely result in virtually all of Canada's available supply serving the U.S. market. Market analysts estimate that Canada possesses approximately 3.3 million tons of capacity. The remaining available U.S. capacity is approximately 1.8 million tons. Consequently, both Canada and U.S. producers could service virtually the entire U.S. market. Therefore, if U.S. production is to restart, excluding any other import sources from the relief would undermine Section 232 relief to the point where U.S. industry would see virtually no benefits. Consequently, if the administration is contemplating a tariff rate quota, the quota portion on other import sources should be extremely small and can be phased down to a very small or de minimis level over 6 to 9 months as U.S. production restarts and the need for non-Canadian imports is eliminated. Moreover, relief must be predicated on adjusting for China's attempt to capture control of the entire value chain. Chinese industrial policy promotes downstream production and exports through the use of massive production subsidies and an export tax on primary aluminum designed to channel cheap inputs into manufacturing downstream aluminum products. Chinese exports of downstream products have soared, taking market share away from domestic producers elsewhere and reducing demand for primary aluminum outside of China. Thus, it is critical that Section 232 is relief. Relief is broad and also encompasses release for downstream producers of aluminum products. Downstream producers also manufacture products for U.S. military and critical infrastructure applications. In conclusions, for these reasons, I recommend that the Commerce Department find that aluminum imports are threatening to impair national security and critical national infrastructure, and recommend that the President authorize trade relief in the form of tariffs covering all aluminum imports in HTS Chapter 76, excluding imports from Canada. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mr. Bless.
Good morning. I'm Michael Bless, President and CEO of Century Aluminum Company. On behalf of my 1,800 colleagues, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today with you. Century is the largest remaining producer of primary aluminum in the U.S. We've got 3 smelters, 2 in Kentucky and 1 in South Carolina. Our smelters produce both standard purity and high purity primary aluminum used in U.S. military and critical infrastructure applications. We are strongly committed to producing the highest quality aluminum products in the U.S. for the U.S. market. Our ability to continue to doing so is at risk. This investigation comes at a vital time. The domestic industry is in danger of completely disappearing, as you've heard. In 2000, the U.S. was one of the largest producers of primary metal in the world. There were 23 smelters in this country. Today, there are only 5, and of these, as you've heard, only 2 are running at full capacity. In just the last 4 years, employment and production have fallen nearly 60%. This statistic alone highlights precisely why it is a matter of national security to maintain what is left of this industry. Aluminum pricing is transparent and efficient, reflecting total global supply and demand. Since 2011, prices have crashed in the U.S. industry, has seen several of its remaining smelters shuttered. Neither a decline in demand nor higher costs explain this drop. In fact, over this time, Demand has grown significantly, and energy costs in the United States have declined. This should have been a healthy period for America's smelters. Instead, prices have collapsed due to ever-expanding overproduction led by state-owned and state-invested enterprises inside and outside China. Market principles simply do not apply in China. China has no natural comparative advantage. Its smelters are amongst the highest cost producers in the world. They lose money yet continue to expand. Capacity in China has increased by nearly 1,500% from 2000 to 2015. During that same period, smelters have closed across the U.S., from Washington State to West Virginia. China's system incentivizes further downstream overproduction. Since 2000, China's exports of downstream products to the U.S. have increased by over 10,000%. The surge in Chinese downstream exports further displaces additional U.S. primary aluminum production. Thus, it is vital, in our opinion, that broad, comprehensive relief benefit the entire value chain. As China drove metal prices down, U.S. production collapsed, and imports from the rest of the world have surged into the United States. Since 2012, imports from non-Canadian sources are up over 95%, while U.S. production is down over 60%, as you've heard. Because all aluminum is priced on a global exchange, the LME, these imports further transmit the Chinese price effects to the U.S. U.S. producers cannot restart production with these large volumes of low-price aluminum imports from the rest of the world in the market. So much of our production has collapsed that we are on the verge of losing the ability to produce all aluminum, not just high purity. And once a smelter shuts, it rarely reopens. We will then be entirely dependent on imports from outside the U.S., some from even unstable and hostile sources. We need relief in order to ensure the U.S. industry is not lost forever. Before I discuss how, I'd like to speak briefly about high-purity production. High-purity aluminum is used extensively in the defense industry, from aircraft to armored plate. High-purity metal can only be produced in large commercial quantities at smelters like ours in Hawesville, Kentucky. There are other processes by which high-purity aluminum is refined further. These methods cannot produce large commercial quantities of high purity, and currently only Japan and China employ these methods. Consequently, this is not a viable substitute for high-purity aluminum we produce. Recently, we suffered from a significant surge in high-purity aluminum from Dubai at prices well below ours. Some of our customers even testified in other settings that they have switched sources due to concerns over the U.S. industry's long-term viability. As a result, earlier this year, we were forced to cease all high-purity production. Losing this volume jeopardizes our ability to properly train our workers to continue this production. This production can be restarted, but only if imports are adjusted. It is vital, however, that we maintain the capacity to produce not just high purity in the U.S., but all primary aluminum. Primary aluminum is a core input for such critical infrastructure as transportation, urban centers, energy transmission, and defense. We at Century recognize that imports are a necessary part of the U.S. supply chain. It is not our position that the U.S. can or should be totally self-sufficient. However, the status quo is unsustainable. We believe that other than Canada, all imports must be adjusted. Canada is the largest exporter of primary metal to the U.S. and a stable source of supply. Therefore, to adjust prices to reasonable levels, relief must be applied to all non-Canadian import sources. Excluding Canada from relief will cause virtually all Canadian supply to shift to the U.S. Along with remaining U.S. capacity that can be restarted quickly, there is enough stable North American supply to service nearly all North American demand. We believe a significant tariff on all non-Canadian import sources will cause the appropriate adjustment. These non-Canadian import sources are supplied from long distances. Excluding additional countries beyond Canada from the relief would make any relief ineffective. By adjusting imports through this investigation, the administration can preserve what is left of this industry while addressing the root cause of the problem, China's excess production and capacity through the WTO process. But without real relief in this proceeding, the nation's security, including its critical infrastructure, is at risk. And we thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. You stated that the surge in Chinese semi-finished exports further displaces additional U.S. primary aluminum production. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Yes, certainly. So that production would have otherwise been served by U.S. primary production that would have been producing. And as was noted, I'd like to note, there's upwards of 1 million tons, we believe, much of which is ours, that could be restarted to service that downstream demand if we had a rationally traded market.
Thank you. Any other questions from the panel? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker, Mr. Lapidus.
Good morning. Mr. Secretary, members of the Commerce Department, and other distinguished panelists and guests. My name is John Lapides, and I'm from United Aluminum Corporation in North Haven, Connecticut. I'm the president of a fourth-generation family-owned rolling mill in North Haven, Connecticut. I've worked at United Aluminum since my graduation from Stanford Business School in 1977, and I have served as president for 27 years. United was founded by my great-grandfather in 1891, and Harris was an immigrant from Russia. My grandfather, Louis, bought the first rolling mill in 1915. My father, Robert, returned to United after serving as captain of 2 destroyers in World War II, and later served at the Pentagon during the Korean conflict. My father became the company's second president on the death of my great-grandfather, Harris. Originally named United Smelting and Aluminum Company, Inc., United began rolling over 100 years ago. The company was a founding member of the Aluminum Association in 1933, along with Alcoa and Reynolds Aluminum. My points are brief. First, the North American supply chain is tightly integrated, and Canadian smelters are critical to the supply of slabs used for rolling. Second, Chinese overcapacity has caused low world prices and has already significantly impacted U.S. smelting capacity, causing numerous curtailments and closures. United Aluminum is concerned about the supply of high-purity aluminum. Third, Chinese overcapacity and subsidized pricing in rolled products threatens the viability of U.S. rolling mills. In addition, the imbalance of tariff rates between the U.S. and China and most other major trading countries disadvantages U.S. producers. China imposes a 10% tariff on imports and at the same time incentivizes exports of rolled product with a 17% VAT rebate. Europe and the UK impose a 7.5% tariff on imports of coil, including the freight costs, while the U.S. only imposes a 3% duty on imports. Combined with the weak euro, the benefit to the northern EU countries is significant. Fourth, Chinese subsidized pricing of end-use products threatens the entire U.S. downstream manufacturing base. The loss of know-how, capability, and capacity in end-use markets will continue to harm our readiness and our national security. When we need it, will we be able to build it? And will we be able to build it in time? China has unfairly exported not only their products, but also their unemployment, their pollution, and potential social unrest. Fifth, the U.S. is uncompetitive on tax rates, vocational training, competitive truck weights, and freight and commuter rail capability. We need to address those issues as well. Last, I would suggest the following remedies. First, impose a tariff on Chinese ingot and coil, but also, in addition, impose a tariff on Chinese aluminum content in any form to provide a disincentive for Chinese dumping in end-use markets. Second, police interference by sovereign states in foreign exchange markets to prevent currency manipulation, benefiting those countries. Third, eliminate unbalanced tariffs and non-tariff barriers which harm U.S. exports in China and the Eurozone. Europe, I might note, has a 7.5% duty on Chinese imports of coil, and very little coil is actually imported into the Eurozone, so it's effective. In closing, with the trade situation of what it is, we can't make America great again by being totally dependent on other countries. On behalf of American workers and companies that can invest in the United States, I thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Mr. Adams.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary and distinguished panelists. I am John Adams, President of Guardian 6 LLC and a retired Brigadier General of the United States Army. There's no doubt in my mind that aluminum imports are a threat to U.S. national security and that broad and immediate Section 232 remedies are necessary to address this threat. I'm a proud Army veteran with over 30 years of experience as an Army aviator, strategist, and intelligence officer. My final post prior to retiring from the Army in 2007 was as Deputy U.S. Military Representative to the NATO Military Committee in Brussels. In 2013, I authored a study on the military's growing and dangerous reliance on foreign nations for the raw materials, parts, and finished products needed to defend the United States. I concluded then that the United States' growing reliance on imports of aluminum, bauxite, and other materials places our U.S. national security at risk. This conclusion was true back in 2013 and is especially so today as the domestic aluminum industry's financial and operational condition has only worsened due to imports. Aluminum is a raw material with critical U.S. national security applications. Primary aluminum and other aluminum products are used in a variety of military applications, including F-18 and F-35 fighter aircraft, Navy and Coast Guard vessels, and Army and Marine Corps tactical vehicles. Aluminum's high strength-to-weight ratio, formability, rigidity, and ballistic protection are indispensable to our modern arsenal. As an Army aviator myself during the 1980s, I saw firsthand the importance of aluminum in providing the lightweight strength essential to my aircraft's wings for high-stress flight maneuvers. Aluminum is also used in numerous critical infrastructure applications, including bridges and highways, buildings, and other construction. Aluminum is widely used in utility grids. In the event of war, natural disaster, or any other natural emergency, damage to our critical infrastructure is likely, which would only increase our demand for aluminum and reinforce the importance of ensuring adequate domestic supply. Therefore, as it has done in prior Section 232 investigations, the Commerce Department should continue to broadly define national security to include our critical infrastructure. It is no secret that the Chinese government provides massive subsidies to its aluminum industry. The result of China's growing aluminum overcapacity and production has been a complete collapse in global aluminum pricing. Because all aluminum is priced on the global exchange, U.S. imports of aluminum simply transfer the adverse price and volume effects of Chinese excess capacity and production to our market, which has sent U.S. prices tumbling. The collapse in U.S. pricing has resulted in dramatic declines in U.S. production capacity and revenue. In 2010, the U.S. industry had 3.3 million tons of capacity and produced 1.7 million tons of primary aluminum. Last year, the industry had 1.9 million tons of capacity and produced only 820,000 tons. This year, these figures are expected to be even worse. Hundreds of highly skilled jobs have been lost in the process. The current state of the domestic aluminum industry is simply unsustainable from a national security standpoint. Our national security relies on the U.S. industry's smelting capabilities. However, given the dramatic declines in U.S. primary aluminum capacity and production, the vast majority of primary aluminum is now produced overseas. This means that U.S. producers of finished products that are directly used in our military and critical infrastructure increasingly rely on imports from Russia, the Middle East, and elsewhere for this critical input. These are potentially hostile sources of supply and at best unstable sources of supply. Qatar provides a good example of the dangers of relying on imports. Just 2 weeks ago, several of its Middle East neighbors severed diplomatic ties with Qatar, leaving the country without the logistical capability to ship its aluminum outside of the country and placing those relying on Qatar's aluminum exports in a vulnerable position. Put simply, having to rely on aluminum imports that travel over water during a conflict is a risk to our national security. It is also important to consider the industry's ability to supply national security products in the context of the industry as a whole. If the commercial market is unprofitable, the defense production sector, and with it not only the smelters but also the R&D, cannot survive. With this in mind, immediate relief for the aluminum industry is imperative, including 1, recommending remedies that yield a meaningful opportunity for the U.S. aluminum producers to recapture lost market share and rebuild broken supply chains. 2, taking a broad view of the national security importance of aluminum, considering production for military weapons and equipment, as well as homeland security and critical infrastructure. 3, providing relief to the entire aluminum supply chain. The U.S. industry must remain healthy throughout the production chain by incentivizing production from smelting to the finished and fabricated product. 4, establishing enforceable mechanisms for the elimination of global aluminum overcapacity. And lastly, rigorously applying domestic sourcing policies already existing in our government procurement of aluminum. Distinguished panelists, I applaud the administration's initiation of this Section 232 investigation. We cannot allow our American aluminum capacity, R&D, and skilled workforce to disappear. We need concerted action to address these national security risks to our domestic aluminum capacity before we lose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the panel? Thank you so much. Our next speaker, Mr. Hakama.
Good morning. I'm actually John Donnan, Executive Vice President of Kaiser Aluminum. We welcome your leadership in initiating this investigation and are pleased to be able to testify today. The products we produce from high-strength aluminum alloys and the capacity to produce those products in the U.S. are critical for U.S. national security. And we support measures that effectively target unfair competition and address the needs of the entire aluminum value chain, including downstream U.S. aluminum fabricators. Commercial viability is a prerequisite to national security availability. Broad protective measures aimed at all suppliers of primary aluminum will materially increase our cost and undermine our ability to effectively compete in global markets against foreign downstream fabricators that are not impacted. Those unintended consequences would create an advantage for those foreign downstream fabricators, including new government-subsidized Chinese rolling mills, and put downstream fabricators like Kaiser Aluminum at risk. In addition, our competitiveness and the competitiveness of our domestic customers will be substantially and negatively impacted through an increased risk of aluminum-intensive finished products supplied by unimpacted foreign downstream fabricators. By way of background, Kaiser Aluminum is a member of the Aluminum Association and a leading producer of fabricated aluminum products for defense, aerospace, general engineering, automotive, and custom industrial applications. We operate 11 fabricating facilities in the United States and 1 in Canada. We employ over 2,700 employees and ship more than 600 million pounds of plate, sheet, extrusions, and other products to a global customer base. Our facilities have a long history of supplying products to the U.S. military dating back to World War II. Today, our products are used on more than 50 military aircraft, including the F-18, F-22, and F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. We also produce material for armor and mine blast kits for a variety of military platforms, including the Humvee and MRAP, as well as extrusions for munitions, arms, mortars, and rockets. As a downstream participant in the U.S. aluminum industry, we convert primary aluminum or secondary aluminum purchased from third parties into our products. We purchase our primary aluminum through a globally diversified supply base, which supports our globally competitive cost position and is integral to our surety of supply. The downstream sector of the U.S. aluminum industry requires and has seen significant investment in recent years. Kaiser Aluminum has invested over $630 million since 2006 to increase capacity, lower cost, and improve quality. Maintaining our ability to effectively compete in global markets, invest in our facilities, and produce these products in the U.S. are important not just for the jobs provided and communities supported across the country, but also for our long-term national security. Global market imbalances in the aluminum industry are caused by unprecedented excess capacity in China, facilitated through decades of illegal and subsidized investment in production. After exponentially expanding its primary aluminum production, China continues to create downward pressure on world aluminum prices, negatively impacting U.S. producers of primary aluminum and contributing to the shuttering of U.S. aluminum smelters. Similarly, China has been and continues to be engaged in massive, predatory, government-subsidized expansion into the production of downstream aluminum products with a stated intent to support Chinese expansion in military aircraft, support new Chinese competitors, and export those products. In addition, Chinese circumvention of U.S. duties through misclassification and/or transshipment through other countries and the theft of intellectual property also continue to be major competitive concerns. Kaiser Aluminum supports effective solutions that address Chinese overcapacity, government subsidies, and unfair trade practices. A broadly applied measure that impacts all foreign-sourced primary aluminum will do far more harm than good when it comes to U.S. national security, maintaining and generating secure domestic jobs, ensuring global competitiveness of U.S. manufacturers, and maintaining a strong U.S. manufacturing base for domestic downstream fabricators that supply aluminum products for critical defense applications. To be clear, we support all measures that effectively target unfair competition. We need a fair system. If you put us on a level playing field, Kaiser Alumina and our employees can compete successfully against anyone in the world. We welcome and embrace that opportunity. As noted in our brochure, we are proud to serve those that proudly serve. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions from the panel? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for our next speaker, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Robert Smith, and I'm president of the United Steelworkers Local 420A, based in Messina, New York. I have over a decade of experience in the aluminum industry and would like to share with you my concerns over the future of an industry that is critically important to the national security of the United States. In addition, I'd like to make you aware that the United Steelworkers Union will be submitting a comprehensive statement in support of the investigation before the close of the comment period. This investigation comes at a critical time for the American aluminum industry. Domestic aluminum production is an important component of our nation's defense, industrial base, and vital to our critical infrastructure. The Department of Defense classifies aluminum as a strategic material with uses ranging from structural airframe material to electronic components and armor plating. Furthermore, aluminum is increasingly being utilized throughout our nation's critical infrastructure. Whether it is the development of solar panels and extensive use in our electrical grid, or as a lightweight, high-strength building material, aluminum will continue to serve a vital role in the rebuilding and maintaining of our nation's infrastructure. Ensuring that the nation and military have a stable, reliable supply of this critical material is a national security imperative. Modern aluminum production, especially of military-grade, high-purity aluminum, is a highly complex and highly technical process that requires a trained and skilled workforce. The development of those skills takes years. Once capacity is lost, bringing it back online is not something that can be done overnight. Today, there is only one domestic producer still operating that can produce high-purity aluminum, and that represents a national vulnerability. If that producer is forced to shut down because of predatory trade practices, it raises the real and unacceptable danger that the U.S. would be forced to rely on foreign sources in the event of an unforeseen future conflict or natural disaster. And this situation is becoming more of a potential reality each day. Last year, American primary aluminum production dropped below 1 million tons for the first time since the 1950s. And so many domestic smelters have either closed or curbed production that only 2 in the U.S. are considered fully operational. This is being driven by a glut of aluminum in the global market, which is causing a drop in global prices and making it uneconomical for domestic producers to stay in business. This glut of global aluminum has a sadly familiar cause: China. The Chinese government has been illegally subsidizing its aluminum industry for years, driving a massive expansion of its production and capacity far beyond its internal demand. These state-subsidized Chinese producers are then dumping this excess production on the world market. The proof is in the numbers. Between 2006 and 2015, Chinese primary aluminum production grew by over 225%. And by the end of 2015, it accounted for more than half of all aluminum production in the world. While, as I mentioned earlier, U.S. production reached its lowest point in more than 60 years. This trend shows no sign of stopping. Swift governmental action is critical if the American aluminum industry is to survive and continue to provide good jobs for American workers, the highest quality products to the American military, and the critical infrastructure that we need. As the government approaches this issue, Let me emphasize that the driving force behind our aluminum problems is Chinese overcapacity. Unlike steel, where dumped and subsidized products have directly impacted our market, China's policies and practices have suppressed world prices via the London Metal Exchange, where aluminum is priced. Right now, Canadian imports are the largest single source for consumption in our market. But Canadian production is not fueled by illegal and predatory practices, and the approach in this 232 investigation must be to target the production of those countries which are engaging in unfair trade. As our international president, Leo Gerard, has said, Canada should be exempted from any relief measures that might be implemented as a result of the administration's actions. I and other workers in the aluminum sector here in the United States support that approach. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share my views on this important topic.
Thank you. Are there any estimates that you're aware of how long it takes to train skilled workers to work in the aluminum industry?
There's really not a lot of science behind that because we've been continuously going down, so we haven't ramped up production over the years. What I do know is that when it's very rare, but if a plant decides to restart, it takes a long process, it's very expensive, and there's a lot of unknowns with it. There's a lot of safety concerns and stuff just because there's not a lot of science behind restarts. Put it in perspective, our plant started in the late 70s, and we haven't had more than a 3-hour shutdown since then. So that's, there's a lot of things. This is a continuous operation.
Right.
And we just don't restart very often.
And then what's sort of the average level of experience of, say, members of your local?
From my experience, it depends on the job, but to get the folks that we need up to speed to run reliably, probably half the jobs you could train well in 6 months to a year. And then the other half are what would actually take to run the pot line, and it's 10 to 12 years probably before somebody's that good at knowing all of the things that can come up and be able to react to those things.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And our next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary and members of the panel. My name is Marco Palmieri, and I'm the president of Novelis North America, and I'm a member of the Aluminum Association. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this important topic today. Novelis believes that the department's investigation is timely and vital to the future of the domestic aluminum industry. Novelis is the world's largest producer of flat-rolled aluminum products used to make beverage cans, cars and trucks, and other diverse products. Novelis, a $10 billion company, operates 24 facilities in 10 countries, and it is the global leader in aluminum recycling. While we are a global company, we are deeply committed to our North American operations and have made significant investments in our US facilities in recent years, more than $500 million, with additional 500 jobs. Novelis employs around 4,000 people in the US. With its corporate and regional headquarters and Global Research and Technology Center in Georgia, 7 production sites in Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, New York, Ohio, and West Virginia, and a sales and engineering lab in Michigan. Today, I would like to highlight 3 main points for the panel consideration. First, Novelis believes it is important for the department to recognize that the aluminum industries of the US and Canada are intertwined, with Canada playing a vital role in support of US aluminum manufacturing efforts. US smelting operations cannot meet the domestic demand for primary aluminum. At Novelis, we do source both primary and recycled metal from the US, but because it is not possible for us to obtain all of the primary aluminum that we need through our US purchases, we also rely on primary aluminum originating from Canada. Additionally, our facility in Canada works in tandem with our US-based facilities to manufacture products as part of a complex processing chain. For example, When making certain automotive products, aluminum may cross the border at least 4 times before it is fully finished and ready to ship to customers throughout the US, Canada, and Mexico. Therefore, to ensure the viability of the US aluminum industry, the department should exclude Canada from any remedy recommendation made in its final report. Second, Novelis believes in free and fair trade, but there must be a level playing field. Imports originating from countries like China, with excessive overcapacity driven by government subsidies, have significantly affected the aluminum industry, putting Novelis US manufacturing facilities at risk. In fact, unfairly priced aluminum from China has already forced us to exit certain product lines. In 2008, we left the converter foil business and shuttered a facility in Kentucky. Only a few years ago, we sold our household foil business. And in April 2014, we were forced to idle some equipment and lay off workers, experienced workers, at our facility in Indiana. To date, Novelis has maintained profitability by migrating its product portfolio to emphasize markets that have not yet been affected by imports from China. Those imports, however, have been entering new product market segments in the US. Novelis salespeople regularly report hearing about offers of imported products at extremely low price. We also have stronger reasons to believe that the Chinese producers will increase the production of automotive aluminum capacity within the next few years. If this increased capacity of aluminum were permitted to be exported to the US at subsidized and unfair prices, Novelis could be forced to slash production, lay off employees, and shutter entire facilities if those facilities are not able to deliver reasonable rates of return. Third, the same equipment used to process and roll auto sheet can be used to make products for military applications. But those applications make up a small portion of the entire US downstream aluminum market. Therefore, if trade measures under this investigation only were enacted to protect the aluminum used directly in defense-related products, such remedies would not secure the stability of the entire domestic aluminum industry, nor its associated hundreds of thousands of US jobs. In conclusion, Novelis respectfully requests that the department to recognize that, 1, Canada should be excluded from any remedy or recommendation made in the department's final report. 2, unfair prices and subsidized imports originate from outside North America are negatively affecting US national security interests. And 3, relief is needed for the entire aluminum supply chain, including downstream rolled products, to ensure a healthy aluminum industry in the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you. When you talk about the entire aluminum supply chain, is there sort of an industry-accepted definition or group of HS codes that would objectively identify what those products are?
Well, when we talk about the entire supply chain, it comes from the bauxite mining through smelting, the semi-fabrication, which is rolling products, extrusion products, and that's the definition. Then we supply these products to the end makers, like stamping plants and things like that.
I see. Thank you. Any other questions from the panel? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We're ready for our next speaker.
Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am Jean-Marc Germain, CEO of Constellium, based in Baltimore, Maryland, and a member of the Aluminum Association as well. Constellium is a downstream aluminum leader listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We have 12,000 employees, generate $5 billion in revenue, and the US is about 40% of our business. We have a large industrial presence with plants in West Virginia, Alabama, Michigan, Kentucky, Georgia, and an R&D hub in Michigan. Our main clients include Boeing, Airbus, Lockheed Martin, SpaceX, AB InBev, Ball, Ford, General Motors, BMW, to name a few. In the defense market, we have been a key partner to the US defense industry for decades, working with US defense companies such as Lockheed Martin. We also partner with the US Army to develop new aluminum solutions for armored vehicles. In our plant in Ravenswood, West Virginia, we are manufacturing advanced alloys for military aircraft and armored vehicles. We supply plates for military aircrafts and jet fighters, such as the Boeing C-17 Globemaster, the F-16, or the new F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. We consider the US to be one of our key markets. This is why we have invested in the last 5 years over $1.8 billion in our US plants, and in Ravenswood alone, $170 million. Our current positioning as global leader is a direct result of this significant investment program. However, our business is threatened today by China's long-term practice of market distorting policies. The risks that we are facing today are directly linked to the undue cost advantage the Chinese aluminum converters are benefiting from. In particular, non-reciprocity in the access to low-cost raw material puts us at a great disadvantage. Primary aluminum, traded on the Shanghai Futures Exchange, has regularly a price advantage over the price paid by US players, which is based on the London Metal Exchange price. But non-Chinese players cannot access that raw material, as there is a 15% export duty on primary metal and on aluminum scrap out of China. This cost advantage is driven greater for the Chinese aluminum conversion industry, as Chinese rollers and extruders, in addition to benefiting from lower production costs and lower raw material costs, are also profiting from a VAT rebate on their exports of 13 to 17%. Concretely, this means that for a product that would sell for, say, $3,000, China would have a $500 and more advantage through tariff and duty structure, which represents more than half of our value add. So this unfair pricing has already impacted our business, even though we believe the worst is still to come. Already, we have witnessed a significant increase in, for instance, China's US imports of plates from 5,000 tons in 2012 to almost 70,000 tons in 2015, in the span of 3 years. And that represents more than 25% of the market, and more than our own plate shipments out of our mill in Ravenswood. This obviously resulted in missed revenue for our US business, missed profits, and fewer jobs. This situation threatens our downstream business, which relies on both high value-added products and larger volume standard products because of the fixed cost incurred by our facilities' large installed capacity and equipment. Furthermore, as China's interest and skills in aluminum value-added products are rising, our industry is at even greater risk. In the coming years, China is expected to acquire the technical knowledge to produce also higher-end products, and is already pushing into the global aerospace and automotive markets, thus attacking us on more fronts, with us having little ability to fight back. Such a situation is obviously not sustainable in the long term, and has a direct impact on our capacity to invest in our plants and in our assets. While actions are needed to address the excess capacity and unfair pricing from China, I would like to express our strong support of fair, rules-based trade of aluminum among the United States, Canada, and Europe. Our industry is interlinked via a global supply chain, and it is critical for our success. For these reasons, I respectfully request that the Commerce Department and the administration formulate actions to address China's unfair trading practices. Remedies should consider the whole value chain and should target all Chinese-originated products without exclusions. They should be tailored to address China's trade-distorting subsidies while protecting existing relationships between the US, Canada, and Europe. Thank you again for your time, and we appreciate the leadership and foresight that the administration is showing in addressing this issue early on. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Questions? Thank you, sir. And we're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Bob Prusak. I am the CEO of Magnitude 7 Metals. Magnitude 7 Metals recently purchased an idled smelter located in New Madrid, Missouri, which had previously been operated by Noranda Aluminum prior to their bankruptcy in 2016. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today and explain why Section 232 relief is necessary for the domestic aluminum industry. Domestic primary aluminum production is in the midst of a crisis driven by Chinese overproduction. This Chinese overproduction has led directly to declining global prices. Put simply, our industry is at a critical turning point and at risk of disappearing absent much-needed relief. The number of domestic aluminum smelters in the United States has fallen from 23 in 2000 to 5 today, with only 2 running at capacity. I would like to talk to you about 2 of these smelters today, the Ormet smelter in Hannibal, Ohio, and our facility in New Madrid, Missouri. I have a personal connection to both. I served on the board of Ormet Corporation, a domestic producer of primary aluminum from 2007 to its closure in 2014. In early 2013, Ormet announced it was curtailing the operations of its 272,000-ton smelter in Hannibal, Ohio, which is located along the West Virginia border south of Wheeling. Ormet started producing aluminum at its production plant in 1956. Like other U.S. smelters, in the years leading up to its closure, Ormet's production suffered from falling aluminum prices and rising imports, largely driven by global and principally Chinese overproduction. Ormet laid off roughly 1,000 workers in 2013, most of them unionized steel workers. With market conditions continuing to deteriorate, at the end of July 2014, Ormet could no longer withstand the onslaught and announced the permanent closure of its smelter, firing the last 20 workers and dashing any hope that its operations would be revived. Not only did Ormet's closure deal a heavy blow to the workers and their families relying on the company for a decent wage, it also sent shockwaves throughout the Ohio River communities. Ormet was effectively the sole employer in both Clarington and Hannibal, Ohio, and was the largest employer in New Martinsville, West Virginia. When Ormet closed, these towns were decimated. Unfortunately, this story has been repeated in communities throughout the United States. Just last October, my company purchased Noranda's distressed smelting assets out of bankruptcy. As with Ormet, the New Madrid smelter was forced to shut down after more than 45 years in operation. The New Madrid facility produced primary aluminum and semi-finished aluminum products used in both U.S. military and critical infrastructure applications that are vital to U.S. national security. Roughly 900 high-paying, high-skilled jobs were lost when Noranda closed. Many of these workers are still out of work today, more than a year later. When the smelter was operational, the company and its employees spread roughly $45 million throughout southeast Missouri. With this money gone, everyone, from local restaurants and businesses to the local school district, felt the pain. New Madrid County, where the smelter is located, also took a big hit, losing millions of dollars in tax revenue annually. As a result, the local government was forced to delay projects, institute hiring freezes, slash infrastructure spending, and postpone wage increases. Community programs are negatively impacted, as well as the local police and ambulance services. Because the revenue from Noranda comprised nearly 17% of the entire budget for the school district, a budget deficit resulted, leading to layoffs, staff reductions, and program cuts. 6 months after Noranda's closure, the unemployment rate in the county more than doubled. Ormet and Magnitude 7 are only 2 among a number of shuttered smelters. We are not yet operational. We are currently negotiating a new power contract and hope to restart operations soon. However, without comprehensive Section 232 relief, our ability to fully restart operations is far from certain. Relief is nothing short of critical to get us up and running and bring Southeast Missouri back to life. This leads me to my final point. Section 232 relief must be broadly granted to the domestic aluminum industry. Relief on high purity alone is insufficient to bring aluminum production back to the United States. If we continue to allow imports to erode our market share of primary aluminum, we will lose the ability to produce primary aluminum of any grade, high purity or otherwise. High purity aluminum will only ever be a small portion of the output at even the most efficient aluminum smelters in the world. Our basic primary aluminum production must therefore be viable in order to allow high purity production domestically. Finally, I would like to stress that excluding any import sources other than Canada, from Section 232 relief would undermine any relief granted to the point where the U.S. industry would see virtually no benefits. If the United States is going to maintain its ability to produce the aluminum that is vital to our national security, we cannot allow the relief to go undermined. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Robb, and as Chief Operating Officer of New Day Aluminum and its Noranda Bauxite and Noranda Alumina subsidiaries, I welcome this opportunity to offer my company's unique perspective on the Commerce Department's Section 232 investigation into imports of aluminum. Our perspective is unique because we operate through Noranda Alumina, the only smelter-grade alumina refinery remaining in the United States. Alumina is the critical raw material in the production of aluminum. Tracing aluminum back to its source, the aluminum process begins with bauxite, which is refined to produce alumina, which is then converted to aluminum through an electrolytic process. It takes approximately 2 pounds of bauxite to produce 1 pound of alumina, and 2 pounds of alumina to produce 1 pound of aluminum. Our alumina refinery is located along the Mississippi River in Gramercy, Louisiana. It currently produces more than 1.1 million metric tons of alumina annually and employs 440 people. Through our Noranda Bauxite subsidiary, we also operate a bauxite mining operation in St. Ann, Jamaica that supplies our alumina refinery. Noranda Alumina is the principal source of alumina supply to Century Aluminum, the largest remaining U.S.-based producer of primary aluminum, for 2 of its 3 operating smelters in the U.S. Century is a significant U.S.-based producer of high-purity aluminum, which is necessary for a number of national defense and military applications. We are proud of that partnership and its service to our nation. We respectfully recommend that any trade policies considered in this investigation should include protections to ensure the continuation of a U.S.-based supply of alumina. We further recommend that any review of the national security effects of imports of aluminum must also include a review of the U.S.'s supply of and access to bauxite ore, from which alumina itself is derived. As the department may be aware, there are no longer any bauxite mining operations in the U.S. The closest sustainable foreign source of bauxite is in Jamaica, where Noranda Bauxite is strategically positioned. The other 3 major mining facilities in Jamaica are wholly or majority owned by Chinese, Russian, and Hong Kong interests, and none are permitted to export bauxite out of Jamaica. Rebuilding the U.S. stockpile of bauxite ore, which began in the 1930s and which was reinvigorated by President Reagan during his administration, would be one way for the U.S. to alleviate the risks associated with sourcing this raw material exclusively from foreign countries and/or foreign interests. We therefore suggest that this administration give strong consideration to creating a U.S. stockpile of bauxite, and we would be willing to work with the government on building up and managing that strategic reserve. As to the importation of aluminum itself, we understand the department's needs to review a variety of trade policies related to this issue. However, and we share this with great deference, we believe trade policies that might significantly restrict or eliminate foreign imports of aluminum may have unintended but significant negative consequences. For example, in 2016, the U.S. produced approximately 60% less primary aluminum than it produced in 2012. Over the same period, U.S. demand for raw and semi-manufactured aluminum increased by more than 40%. This tells us that the importation of primary aluminum is necessary and must continue, especially in the near term. I'm a businessman and not an economist, but I believe that the current Chinese dominance in the production of both alumina and aluminum creates an ability for China to manipulate the aluminum value chain for its benefit. If such manipulation puts U.S. and other allied countries' alumina and aluminum production facilities out of business, we and our allies will become dependent on foreign sources of these critical raw materials. We recognize that may be the worst of all possible scenarios, but merely suggest that all eventualities be considered in your investigation. In conclusion, we recommend that the department consider creating a strategic reserve of bauxite in the U.S. We also recommend that the various unintended consequences of severe tariffs or trade regulations on foreign imports of aluminum, only one of which was postulated here, be examined in robust detail in considering whether and how such restrictions should be imposed. Thank you for the opportunity to offer our comments. I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. On the issue of no bauxite mining in the United States, is that because there are no bauxite deposits left, or is it for other for other factors?
There's no economically extractable bauxite from a quality perspective.
So that's not kind of a trade issue, it's
Correct.
just a natural resources issue.
Correct.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary and members of the panels. Thank you for the opportunity to share Jupiter Aluminum and its employees' view here today. My name is Paul-Henry Chevalier. I'm the president of Jupiter Aluminum Corporation, an American privately held aluminum producer based in Des Plaines, Illinois. I'm here today because we need to preserve our industry and manufacturing jobs by establishing a level playing field with honest and fair competition so market distorting behavior ceases. Jupiter Aluminum is turning 25 this year, and since 1992, grew from a few tons to over 100 tons shipped annually. We are about 400 people working in 3 plants, 2 in Indiana and 1 in West Virginia. 24/7, we transform aluminum scrap sourced domestically into coils sold in the construction, automotive, distribution, and government markets. Your car most probably has a license plate cast in our mills one day. Over 95% of our products are sold in the US and Canada. While relatively small compared to many other aluminum producers, Jupiter's impact on the local and domestic economies is much larger than its own size when you factor in the various vendors and partners our operations require. And there is no need to remind everyone that manufacturing and manufacturing-related jobs pay very well with excellent benefits. Today, I will focus on 3 specific damaging consequences of the Chinese trade practices. The first damaging consequence is directly related to fair trade. The aluminum market started attracting the Chinese in 2003. The Aluminum Association organized a meeting with the Deputy Assistant to the Secretary of Commerce in December 2003 to raise the issue about the Chinese trade practices that allowed them to sell below market price. Not much resulted from that meeting. Since then, Chinese aluminum production soared from 11% of worldwide supply to 55% today. 21 American smelters closed in the same period. China developed this extraordinary capacity during one of the world's worst recessions. Jupiter Aluminum adapted to the new economic environment. Our patented high-temperature oxy-fuel technology saves 70% of our natural gas consumption. That technology, by the way, also reduces CO2 emissions by 70%. However, innovation did not suffice. We also trimmed costs, investments, and growth. Competition is good as it forces you to continuously improve. That, however, only works when standard economic rules apply to everyone. In China, financial viability doesn't seem as important as providing jobs and maintaining social stability. Once American aluminum production is gone, nothing will block Chinese companies from moving downstream and directly sell finished goods to our customers' customers. Today, China is still increasing production, resulting in dangerous oversupply. This battle of job creation in China versus financial performance in the US is unfair. The second damaging consequence is related to our children's future. That second consequence is global as it affects human health. EPA regulations are good for a reason. However, its standards only apply to American industries. The Aluminum Association has found that if Chinese aluminum producers energized by coal-fired power plants constituted a country, that country would be the 16th largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. North American production, by comparison, is cleaner because regulated. Replacing clean production by dirty production is unfair. The third damaging consequence is on our country's future. Jupiter mills are based in the heart of the steel industry. Over the last 30 years, the region has seen the steel mills bankrupting and downsizing. During that time, demand did not really disappear. Only production moved to China. The same is happening to aluminum. It has become increasingly difficult to attract the next generation in our industry, as it has seen its parents lose their jobs, and beyond their jobs, their faith in their future. The questions are, can our country thrive without an industry? Should our country become completely dependent on China for its manufactured goods? It's clear today that we must work with China on an agreed-upon path forward. That said, that path forward has to be fair and honest without market-distorting behaviors. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thanks to the members of the panel for this opportunity to address the industry's concerns today.
Thank you for your comments. Any questions from the panel? All right, thank you. We will now take a 15-minute break, so we will reconvene at 10:55. Thank you.
They own the mine. Yeah. Brazil could be. What about their plan?
We got to verify that they shut it down. But at the same time, they're getting another lawsuit. I wasn't. I said no. I say no. I'll tell her that it may not be to the benefit. Well, I hate to see that being actually happening. Well, but
they said they shut it down.
Initial smelting with alloy, they are making the only thing that's cheap. They're making their sign. And they're just making all their products. They just don't tell you. If you order high purity, you get it. If you don't order high purity, you can have it. You get it anyways. That way they don't have to change their formula. It's more efficient to not have to get it offline. They just, when they found their new method, they put the front end of their, it's proprietary. They don't know trades. Which is why nobody will know about it, because then they could probably figure out how they're doing it. But it does. But the thing is, it only depends on your cycle. It doesn't depend, which is already. So I don't know if that matters in this context. So we'll discuss it. But if they think it matters, then they should help. Well, I think there's several interesting things. Most everybody is bringing up the fact that be cautious because of the secondary.
Yes.
Because I know the value added downstream stuff. You can't. So for a 4 to 1, 4 pounds of bauxite for 1 pound of aluminum, where are we just talking about bauxite? Well, I mean, you almost have to recommend switching. That's just that answer. That's just that one. But I mean, at least it was constructive though. Another constructive thought is that we're going to have to pay international water for bauxite or aluminum. Why not just take the smelters and get them in the recycling? Well, like I just think that we have enough allies, we have enough capacity for bauxite that we don't need to. You almost want to stock. Plus, the only reason you stockpile something is you have a shortage. We don't have a shortage. But these guys accept because of fixed costs, including labor. The smelters can't compete. Well. I think we got to find another answer. Yes. Yes.
If I could ask everybody to find their seats so we can resume in a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, we will go ahead and reconvene with our next speaker, who I hope is here. Yes, come on up.
Secretary Ross, distinguished panelists, thank you for the opportunity to assist the administration in the 232 investigation on the North American aluminum industry. My name is Henry Gordnier, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Tri-Arrows Aluminum. Tri-Arrows is a downstream producer of rolled aluminum sheet serving the North America beverage container and automotive markets. We are a member of the Aluminum Association. It's our belief that a healthy North American aluminum industry is vital to national security. Our manufacturing operations is in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where we employ over 1,200 employees at the Logan Aluminum Rolling Mill, a production joint venture with Novelis Corporation. The Commonwealth of Kentucky has more than 150 aluminum facilities, from mills to makers of end-user products, and the industry employs nearly 18,000 full-time workers. Aluminum accounts for $2 billion in the state's gross domestic product. Since 2014, Tri-Arrows has invested approximately $425 million in our manufacturing facility, creating 250 high-skilled manufacturing jobs. These investments will increase our capacity by approximately 30% and expand our manufacturing capabilities to serve a wider range of products in the North American market. Notably, these investments protect the capacity needed to serve our existing customer base and support the developing automotive sheet market. At the outset, I would like to emphasize that Tri-Arrows supports fair and free competition, where this competition is based on cost, efficiency, and productivity. Based on these measures, the Logan Rolling Mill is regarded as one of the most productive mills in the world, yielding a low-cost position in the marketplace. But we cannot compete on government subsidies. Direct intervention of capital, labor, land, raw material, and basic inputs has led to massive overcapacity in Chinese aluminum assets upstream and downstream. With the Chinese overcapacity, we believe both our current business as well as future investments and job expansions are at risk. Today, imports of our core products are relatively small. However, they are growing at approximately 30% per year, and that we have seen forecasts that show China targeting over 75% of the West Coast market. Recently, Tri-Arrows has been displaced from West Coast plants in favor of Chinese metal. Metal costs for the Chinese manufacturers are not the same as in other market-based countries. Chinese metal is advantaged over domestic supply due to subsidized smelters, unique metal index, the Shanghai Foreign Exchange, which typically trades at lower levels than the LME, and export policies and tariffs, which favor the export of value-added materials over primary aluminum. Due to these advantages, Chinese mills can offer fabricated products for import at extremely low prices, prices that are so aggressive no Western mill would be able to generate a profit. I can present two recent examples that illustrate where subsidized Chinese imports are impacting the North American aluminum economy today. These examples show that the threat of harm is shifting from conceptual to transactional. First, in a recent multi-year North American contract discussion, Chinese price points were used to anchor the negotiation as a global reference point. Leveraged in this manner, the economic impact of these imports is far greater than the actual volume shipped would indicate. Second, semi-fabricated products from China are being offered today at prices below the exchange-based price for metal in the US, with the intent for these products to be repurposed as raw material. If semi-fabricated product can be sold in North America below the base price for aluminum, it's not a leap to see where this level of discount might be applied to more highly engineered products. In conclusion, Triaro seeks a level playing field in which to compete with all market participants. As the administration considers potential trade remedies, we believe that the unintended consequences can be minimized through recognizing the following. One, the North American aluminum industry is part of and dependent on a global supply chain, where the vast majority of our trading partners operate on market-based principles. Two, the full aluminum value chain should be considered, given the ability for policy to redirect shift values between upstream and downstream products. And three, the threat to the North American aluminum industry stems from Chinese overcapacity and non-market-based trading principles. Thank you.
Thank you. The Chinese overcapacity, I think, has, of course, been in existence for some time. So it's interesting that Triaro did a substantial investment since 2014, sort of notwithstanding that. Could you explain a little bit of the rationale that led to that?
Well, there's growth in the North American automotive sheet market. So, you know, our approach has been, how can we grow our business, participate in growth in the North American automotive market, but at the same time sustain what our core products have been and our core customer base. So, I mean, it was a targeted decision to figure out what kind of investments that we could make that would allow us to sustain what's been a very healthy North America trading partnership or commercial relationships today, balance that with how we could begin to grow in the automotive. So it's really been, how do we have a sustained how do we be a sustained North America provider to both markets?
Thank you. Other questions from the panel? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this very important hearing. My name is Heidi Brock, and I'm President and CEO of the Aluminum Association. The association represents the aluminum value chain. Our membership consists of large global companies, as well as small companies with a domestic or local focus. We represent primary producers of aluminum, producers of semi-fabricated products, and aluminum recyclers, as well as industry suppliers. The U.S. aluminum industry supports nearly 713,000 direct, indirect, and induced jobs, as well as $186 billion in economic output, more than 1% of U.S. gross domestic product. We are proud of the fact that this industry has committed to invest more than $2.3 billion in domestic plant expansions in the United States since 2013. Regarding the question of whether imports threaten U.S. national security, we see three reasons why it is important to look at aluminum as a strategic material and the aluminum industry as highly significant in its industrial contribution to national security. First, aluminum is used in numerous national defense applications, including major components of Army ground vehicles, jets flown by the Air Force, and warships deployed by the Navy. Aluminum is in the most conflict-ridden hotspots on the globe, keeping America's servicemen and women safe. This speaks to the versatility of the metal. Aluminum is lightweight, corrosion-resistant, easily formed, highly conductive, non-toxic, and durable. And aluminum as a base metal can be combined with other materials to create and repurpose alloys for a wide variety of products. For example, in 1954, there were 75 unique aluminum alloys registered at the Aluminum Association. Today, there are more than 540 active alloys that exist for different applications. For example, the Army uses high-strength, blast-resistant aluminum in its vehicles. For the Humvees and Bradley fighting vehicles, aluminum reduces weight, resists rust, and stands up under tough conditions. Second, aluminum is a critically important material for the nation's infrastructure. Aluminum products are essential for energy generation and transmission, satellite communication, and the construction of bridges and buildings, as well as for machinery and equipment that build and maintain that infrastructure. And third, aluminum manufacturing and the products made from aluminum support significant economic activity, activity that contributes to the well-being of Americans and fosters problem-solving innovations in packaging, jet planes, wind turbines, trucks and cars, electronics, among many other things. Having an economically healthy U.S. aluminum industry is vital for the manufacturing and defense industrial base of the United States. As an industry, we have a unified position on a set of principles that we recommend be considered in the current investigation and any recommendations that might emerge from it. First, we respectfully ask that any trade remedies should specifically address Chinese overcapacity and its effects. Second, we also ask that trade remedies not impact current trading relationships between the U.S. and critical trading partner countries, which have been determined by the Department of Commerce to be operating as market economies, especially Canada and the European Union. And finally, we ask that trade remedies consider the entire aluminum value chain, including both primary and downstream U.S. producers and their employees. I mentioned at the outset that the U.S. aluminum industry is united in recognizing Chinese overcapacity as the fundamental trade issue hurting the domestic industry today. As an association, we're working with different government agencies to address this acute and persistent problem. We've supported efforts by the U.S. Trade Representative to pursue bilateral discussions to raise aluminum overcapacity in China as an issue. We've raised our concerns about Chinese misclassification of fake semis to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and we've worked with colleagues in Canada, the EU, and other countries similarly affected by Chinese overcapacity. Ultimately, our view is that the best solution for the U.S. aluminum industry and the jobs it supports would be a negotiated government-to-government agreement with China that results in measurable reductions in Chinese aluminum capacity. That would address the problem directly and set the U.S. industry, both upstream and downstream, on a course of expansion rather than contraction, creating more jobs and more opportunities. I'd like to thank Secretary Ross for this investigation. Our association stands ready to assist in any way possible.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel? Thank you so much. We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Ben Kars, and I'm Senior Vice President for Strategy, Technology, and Corporate Development for Alcoa. On behalf of Alcoa, an Aluminum Association member, we welcome the Department of Commerce's Section 232 investigation on the effect of aluminum imports on U.S. national security and to consider actions that will address unfair trade. Alcoa pioneered the modern aluminum industry in 1888 and has been a global leader for nearly 130 years. Today, the Alcoa is focused primarily on the upstream sector of the aluminum industry, where we mine bauxite, refine it into alumina, and smelt it into aluminum. In the U.S., we have 5 operating locations, including 2 smelters and 1 rolling mill, with 3 other production facilities currently curtailed. Alcoa represents 47% of all U.S. aluminum smelting capacity. Aluminum is a vital component in defense applications, including armored vehicles and fighter jets. And while we believe that there is the ability to produce enough high-purity aluminum in the U.S. for defense applications, we see a risk for national security if there is not ample access to primary aluminum in North America or from other U.S. defense partners. In recent years, that supply has been threatened primarily due to one reason: the oversupply of aluminum being produced in China. Alcoa seeks to compete on a level playing field. We believe that if the United States wants to ensure an ample supply of primary aluminum to help protect national security, 3 steps should be taken. Number 1, address overcapacity of aluminum in China. 2, protect the U.S. aluminum industry's integrated critical supply chain. And 3, provide a competitive environment for the U.S. aluminum industry, including regulatory reform, affordable energy, and critical investment. In 2000, China produced only 10% of the global supply of primary aluminum. Today, it's about 55%. From 2000 until the global financial crisis, China increased its production year over year, while at the same time its economy was growing at a record pace. China was essentially consuming all the aluminum they were producing. As China's economy began to slow, however, domestic Chinese capacity began to outpace its ability to absorb all its production. This year, China's overcapacity is estimated to reach new heights, with a surplus more than 2 million metric tons. That's just slightly below Alcoa's total global smelting operating capacity and nearly half of all North American production in 2016. In total, Chinese domestic consumers consume roughly 30 million metric tons of primary aluminum annually. When compared to the 2 million metric tons of excess primary production, 4 million metric tons of net semi-fabricated products, and 9 million metric tons of curtailed capacity, Chinese current overcapacity is 15 million metric tons per year, or 50% of China's own consumption. This is equivalent to the total direct supply from North America, South America, Europe, and the Middle East combined. We believe China is exporting its domestic problems. China is unfairly subsidized its smelters to maintain employment and keep smelters online when they should be curtailed. And while China's government has committed to reducing production, there is a lack of credible data and transparency to show what actions have been taken. We believe that unfair subsidies for Chinese smelters persist, possibly in the form of tax breaks, loans, or lack of enforcement on policies already on the books. The result has been a significant curtailing or shuttering of aluminum smelting capacity outside of China with no greenfield investment in the U.S. Because of overproduction in China, aluminum prices never fully recovered from the global financial crisis and remain 25 to 30% lower than before the crisis. And the overcapacity has tremendous impact on the number of aluminum plants operating and jobs here in the U.S. Alcoa has closed, curtailed, or divested 43% of its smelting capacity and 35% of its refining capacity since 2007. And in the U.S., this has impacted more than 1,500 jobs in New York, Washington, Indiana, and Texas in just the last couple years. As such, the U.S. government should directly engage with the Chinese government to address the ongoing overcapacity problem in the aluminum industry and to ensure that Chinese overproduction no longer spills out into the rest of the world. Outside of China, the aluminum industry has an integrated supply chain essential to the health of the entire aluminum value chain. Unencumbered trade flows between our vital trading partners, including Canada and Europe, are critical to the success of the U.S. aluminum industry. Alcoa smelters in Canada export 60% of the metal to the U.S., serving customers in 25 states and supporting our economy through downstream jobs. We need to protect vital supply chains and the 160,000 jobs that depend on them. Indeed, maintaining a diverse supply chain among longstanding allies and vital trading partners bolsters our national security. Providing a favorable business environment that allows our operations in the U.S. to compete globally is also essential to the long-term viability of the U.S. primary industry. We must have efficient regulatory policies, competitive energy prices, and an environment that allows our plants to compete fairly. In addition, our production facilities would benefit from investment in innovative technologies in the form of a public-private partnership to advance our smelting industry to the next generation. With investment in R&D and the commercialization of technological breakthroughs, we can ensure the competitiveness of existing smelters and secure jobs in the U.S. In conclusion, Alcoa greatly appreciates the U.S. government's sustained commitment to addressing the challenges facing our industry. We look forward to the findings of Section 232 and remain committed to continued engagement on these critical issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you so much. We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. I'm Dan Langer with PHP Incorporated. Thank you for the opportunity to appear on behalf of PHP Incorporated with facilities in Fairview and Erie, Pennsylvania. Our company was founded in 1906. PHP Incorporated is a U.S.-based supplier of aluminum and zinc die castings, CNC die casting machining, molds, and tooling. We ask that the department consider the impact its decision will have on the entire supply chain, particularly American defense suppliers using aluminum. An ITAR registered company, PHP has over 500 skilled employees in Northwest Pennsylvania, manufacturing castings for some of the largest corporations in the United States. Our employees make critical products for the defense, automotive, appliance, and lighting industry, among others. Last year alone, we produced more than 15 million castings and poured nearly 50 million pounds of alloy. With over 100 years of aluminum die casting experience, our company is one of the global leaders in aluminum casting. We typically use aluminum alloys 360, 380, 383, and 413. We also use zinc aluminum alloys, ZA8, ZA12, and ZA27, along with number 3 zinc alloy. As a supplier to the U.S. military, we manufacture military radio castings used by all branches of the U.S. military and special operations around the world. Aluminum consumers like PHP in Pennsylvania are critical to national security. Not only are we the customers setting the demand, but we are the U.S. suppliers helping meet the needs of our warfighters. PHP is a critical part of the defense industry's supply chain, and any disruptions in our raw material can send a ripple effect throughout the military. In fact, we are already facing significant challenges ourselves from imports of aluminum castings from India. While I know Washington focused much of its attention on excess Chinese aluminum, and rightfully so, I encourage the department to look at imports and downstream products from around the globe. Having a strong and growing domestic aluminum supply is critical not only to national security, but also to economic growth. While PHP does not import any aluminum directly, we do purchase globally produced secondary aluminum through our domestic suppliers. We are very concerned that restricting imports or placing tariffs on aluminum will simply lead to more castings coming into the U.S. with foreign aluminum, all duty-free. Shifting the injury to another part of the defense supply chain will not help U.S. aluminum producers, but cause all of us to lose. We strongly urge the department to not only look at the impact of imported aluminum on national security, but also on products primarily manufactured from aluminum. Downstream suppliers like us are often family, small businesses, and we already face a number of challenges. Our company continues to grow to meet the needs of our defense and other customers, but we are very concerned about an increase of import castings and other aluminum-containing products from India, China, and elsewhere. We ask the department take a broader look at the aluminum marketplace and not take action that will shift the injury to our industry by giving imported castings with cheap aluminum a free pass. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Are there particular types of aluminum castings from India that you're seeing coming into the United States?
Yes, automotive-related castings and appliance-related castings is our largest competition.
Thank you. Questions, rest of the panel? Thank you for your testimony. We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Cosentino. I'm Vice President for Government Affairs and Defense for Arconic. We value the administration's engagement with our industry and appreciate the opportunity to participate in today's 232 hearing. We submit that a healthy U.S. aluminum industry enhances our national security and that solutions identified during this investigation support all segments of the value chain, including mid and downstream. Arconic is a lightweight metals manufacturer who works with our customers to solve complex engineering challenges, transforming the way we fly, drive, build, and power. Our businesses have helped shape the aerospace, defense, automotive, and building industries since the days of the Wright brothers and Henry Ford. Today, we continue to advance cutting-edge technologies, from metal powders optimized for additive manufacturing to next-generation automotive alloys that are significantly more formable and stronger than those in use today. Arconic is tremendously proud of our 22,750 employees in the United States. Since 2009, we have invested more than $3 billion to modernize our U.S. facilities, adding more than 2,600 high-quality advanced manufacturing jobs. We are an active and longstanding member of the U.S. Aluminum Association. Arconic is proud to serve as a leading aluminum products supplier to Department of Defense programs, providing engineered solutions that increase survivability, reduce weight, and enhance performance across air, land, and sea platforms. Today, Arconic aluminum rolls, flies, and sails on over 80 major defense programs of record. Our defense solutions are produced across 45 plants in the United States. Armor plate manufactured at Davenport, Iowa, can be found on nearly every new U.S. combat and tactical vehicle program of record. Single-piece aluminum bulkheads forged in Cleveland form the backbone of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. The demand for aluminum on critical U.S. military platforms is expected to grow significantly over the next 5 years, driven by the planned ramp of programs like the JSF and the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. Demand for cold-rolled aluminum alone for armor plate and marine applications is expected to triple by 2021. We have long collaborated on research and development with the U.S. Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps on alloys and manufacturing processes. For example, we work with the U.S. Air Force to develop next-generation propulsion and airframe structural components through the Metals Affordability Initiative. This is a consortium dedicated to leveraging government and industry resources to reduce costs and lead time associated with producing metallic aircraft components. Arconic has a long history of manufacturing partnerships with the DoD, including those that helped build the world's widest aluminum rolling mill in Davenport, Iowa, and the 50-kiloton press in Cleveland, which produces some of the largest closed-side forgings in the world. Through these investments, we help ensure robust industrial capacity, supporting military readiness, and enhancing the country's technological edge in manufacturing. Arconic has continued to invest in these assets over the years, including a recent $100 million upgrade to the Cleveland Forge and nearly $500 million in investment at Davenport. Arconic's defense portfolio is overwhelmingly commercial item. This means we leverage the best of our innovation developed for commercial application to meet the unique needs of the warfighter. This means our defense products are manufactured across hundreds of commercial flow paths rather than on their own dedicated assets. To best maintain the health of our advanced aerospace and defense product lines, we rely on a strong backlog across our product portfolio to include business in automotive, industrial, and packaging. This allows us to optimize mix across our plants and produce our parts in the most efficient and cost-effective manner possible. Regarding high-purity aluminum, new defense platforms have requirements that call for higher purity aluminum than legacy programs, and we expect this trend to continue. Arconic invented a refining process that produces high-purity aluminum using fractional crystallization. This is in operation today at our plant in Davenport. Arconic aerospace and defense products account for the majority of total U.S. demand for high-purity aluminum. Our process is reliable, efficient, and produces the highest levels of purity. We currently produce a significant share of our own utilization, and this is an easily scalable process. Finally, U.S. mid and downstream producers rely on primary aluminum imports. The majority of these imports are Canadian in origin and produced at factories that are part of the U.S. defense industrial base. Action on primary aluminum imports would do little to address global overcapacity and potentially harm the U.S. defense industrial base by disrupting the integrated North American supply chain. In conclusion, we appreciate the administration's engagement on a topic of great importance to our industry and the U.S. defense industrial base. We look forward to working with the team to ensure an outcome that supports U.S. competitiveness and enhances our national security. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Billy Hughes, and I'm a proud veteran of the United States military. I've worked in the aluminum industry for the past 10 years. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the importance of domestic aluminum production to national security and why Section 232 relief is necessary for our industry. I've been a reduction services superintendent at Century Aluminum Hawesville in Kentucky for the past 2 years. In this role, I administer activities of the pot lines as well as the cell relining. I'm on the floor day in and day out to ensure that we produce the highest aluminum production possible. Prior to this position, I worked at Alcoa in Warwick for 8 years. I was a supervisor there, and I was also hourly as a process control operator. I left there in 2015, just before the shutdown. For the past 10 years, aluminum has been a big part of my life and the lives of my friends and family. I'm grateful for my job at Hawesville, and I'm luckier than most to still have a job in this industry. However, I'm concerned without much needed relief, this will not be the case much longer. What was once a thriving industry has all but disappeared. In my time in the industry, I saw conditions deteriorated as China expanded production and crashed prices. As just one example, in the industry, our bonuses are often based on the company's performance. This means that as the market started to get bad, so did our bonuses. Sometimes there were none. Today, I feel fortunate to work at Hawesville, the last remaining U.S. smelter that can make high-purity aluminum. However, even this facility is at risk. Over the past 5 years, Hawesville has issued 2 separate notices that would permanently shut down operations in 60 days. Lucky for us, on both occasions, the smelter was able to pull its business back from the brink, but not without layoffs. In the past 2 years alone, the facility has been forced to let hundreds of workers go and has been scrapping unused machinery for cash to help us get by. Hawesville could easily become the next aluminum smelter to go under unless relief is granted. I would stress that the production of high-purity aluminum requires highly technical skills that are not easily replaceable. The high-purity production process is complex and leaves no room for error. This process is part art and part science. Even the slightest amount of impurities can throw an entire pot off. When these jobs go, so do the specialized skills needed to produce the high-purity aluminum. The domestic industry's problems have taken its toll on its workers and families. Many who have lost their jobs remain unemployed to this day. Not a week has gone by where I don't receive a phone call from a former colleague looking for work. Our communities have also suffered. Like Hawesville, smelters are typically located in small, family-friendly towns. When their largest employer is forced to shut down and reduce jobs, the whole town feels it. As a veteran of the U.S. Army, I know firsthand how important aluminum is to the men and women that put their lives on the line for their country. I served in both OEF and OIF following September 11. When I first arrived in Iraq, 2003, Humvees were no match for the IEDs. We were losing soldiers left and right because our vehicles had little protection from roadside bombs. At this time, members of my unit were forced to line our vehicles with scrap metal, sandbags, bulletproof vests for added protection. By the time my younger brother arrived in Iraq for 2008, conditions thankfully improved. The Army began using high-purity aluminum alloy in its vehicles, which is significantly more effective at absorbing a blast. Only one can imagine how many U.S. soldiers' lives were saved because of this switch. I fully agree with Secretary Ross that the primary and high-purity aluminum produced at Hawesville is a hugely important thing to defense. My fear is that if we allow imports to continue entering the U.S. market and harming U.S. production and workers, the domestic aluminum industry will become a thing of the past and our national security will suffer. It is critical that we maintain the capability to produce aluminum and not are forced to depend on unreliable and unsafe sources of supply to meet this need. I know how important aluminum is protecting our soldiers and wouldn't want to depend on imports from the Middle East or somewhere else during a time of war or other national emergency. For these reasons, I ask that you grant immediate Section 232 relief for domestic aluminum industry. On behalf of myself, my colleagues, and friends and family, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for your comments. A similar question I had for Mr. Smith. Can you give us a sense of the amount of time needed to get the experience to have the people like you and people who work with you and for you to do that specialized work on the pots?
I can tell you that once a smelter goes, the people are gone too.
Sure.
People like me are going to be looking for jobs in different industries, and it's going to be hard to come back. It's not going to be an easy task to restart a pot line, no matter where you go. It takes a lot of technical experience. You're looking for guys with, 10 to 20 to 30 years experience to start these pot lines.
Other questions from the panel? Thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Alf Barrios. I'm the Chief Executive of Rio Tinto Aluminum. I sit on the Rio Tinto Executive Committee and serve as the company's country sponsor for Canada and the United States. Rio Tinto appreciates this opportunity to offer comments to assist the Department of Commerce and Department of Defense in the Section 232 National Security Investigation of aluminum imports. Rio Tinto commends the Trump administration for focusing attention on the vital role that aluminum plays in defense capability. My comments today will highlight the essential nature of aluminum to the North American integrated supply chain that is the basis of that capability. Rio Tinto is a leading global mining and metals company that focuses on finding, mining, and processing essential mineral resources. We have been in business for more than 140 years, and some of our longest operating assets are located in the United States. One of our major products is aluminum, largely produced in North America. Rio Tinto is proud to have operations in the United States that have provided critical minerals to U.S. customers for over 100 years. For example, Bingham Canyon Mine in Salt Lake City, Utah, is a fully integrated copper, gold, and molybdenum mine and smelter that has operated for 110 years and supplies over 30% of U.S. copper demand. Rio Tinto is also investing for the future, prioritizing mineral explorations in North America that will support future U.S. manufacturing demand. To date, Rio Tinto has invested over $1.3 billion to develop the Resolution copper mine in Arizona. This mine will require $6 to $8 billion of investment over the next several years and is one of the largest private investments currently pending in the U.S. permitting process. Rio Tinto's operations, such as those in Utah, California, Arizona, are strong contributors to the United States economy and employment. In the primary aluminum sector, Rio Tinto is a significant contributor to the integrated manufacturing supply chain in North America, as the largest producer of primary aluminum. Our smelters in Quebec and British Columbia have a long history of supplying the U.S. manufacturers, particularly customers in the defense sector. In regard to the national security focus of this hearing, the United States and Canada have treated each other as indispensable partners in national defense for nearly a century. The Canadian-American Defense Industrial Alliance, known as the Defense Production Sharing Program, predates the U.S. entry into the Second World War. In 1940, Canada and the United States established the Permanent Joint Board on Defense, which still operates today. The Hyde Park Declaration of 1941 allowed American-made war material to be produced in Canada and provided to Great Britain. Close defense coordination between the U.S. and Canada continues today. For over 20 years, U.S. law has defined the national technology and industrial base to include Canada. Canada was the only country to receive such treatment until Congress recently added Australia and the United Kingdom. This long-standing and deep cooperation between the United States and Canada has been recognized in prior Section 232 investigations. In a recent 232 investigation, the Department of Commerce recognized that, quote, Canada is largely integrated with the United States in the defense arena and is considered part of the North American industrial base in defense planning. Rio Tinto is proud to play a critical role in supporting the U.S. manufacturing base. 75% of Rio Tinto's Canadian aluminum production is shipped to the U.S., where we have sales in more than 35 states. Among many historical examples of Rio Tinto's operations in North America and their connection to the defense supply chain is our Shipshaw hydropower plant. This plant was built in 1943 with encouragement from both the U.S. and Canadian governments. The Shipshaw hydropower station and the aluminum smelting operations it fed proved vital in the ramp-up of Allied forces, of Allied defense manufacturing capability. Today, it is a key component of a hydroelectric power network which feeds the aluminum smelters that provide reliable aluminum supplies to North American customers. The United States has long considered Canada's resources and manufacturing capabilities to be a vital part of the North American defense industrial base. Consistent with U.S. law and policy, Rio Tinto has long been a proud partner to the U.S. government, private industry, and local communities. We look forward to continuing and deepening these relationships. Thank you for allowing me to participate today.
Thank you. Has Rio Tinto seen any impact in its Canadian operations from the Chinese oversupply?
When we have seen in the past some impact from the Canadian smelters from the Chinese oversupply, and I must say that the recent statements from the Chinese government do recognize the oversupply of the aluminum sector and offer some hope. I believe that the best outcome always is a negotiated solution led by the US with the Chinese. This will provide, we believe, a more sustainable, long-term solution which will give clarity and predictability for the future industrial investments in North America.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We're ready for the next witness.
Good morning. My name is Allison Keene, and I'm the president and CEO of the Flexible Packaging Association. Flexible packaging represents over $30 billion in annual sales in the U.S., and it's the second largest and fastest growing segments of the packaging industry. The industry employs over 80,000 workers in the United States. It's produced from paper, foil, plastic, film, or any combination of these materials. This includes bags, pouches, labels, liners, wraps, roll stocks, and other flexible products. With respect to aluminum foil, this packaging includes everyday food and beverage products such as Hershey Kisses, Pringles, Dannon Yogurt, Capri Sun, as well as health and beauty items such as Tylenol, Clinique Plus, Gillette Shaving Cream. Aluminum foil is used by the flexible packaging industry for medical device packaging as well to ensure that the products packaged, such as absorbable sutures, human tissues, and artificial joints, are maintain their efficacy and sterility at the time of use. This Section 232 investigation seeks to determine what, if any, effects imports of aluminum have on national security. FPA is not aware of any impacts aluminum foil imports for the use in the packaging industry has on national security. We support the efforts to protect domestic manufacturing and ensure national security, but believe any such efforts must consider the impact and consequences on all U.S. manufacturing sectors. Accordingly, the scope of these actions must be limited to address the specific objectives. Aluminum foil imports should be excluded from consideration without any application to national security. And if it's in its investigation, the administration is to consider a range of factors related to national security, including the economy, the effects of foreign competition on economic welfare, and impacts on employment. Any import restrictions, we believe, on aluminum foil will have a significant negative impact on the flexible packaging industry and its employment in the United States. This investigation is paralleling an International Trade Commission investigation of Chinese aluminum foil imports. The petition claims that dumped and subsidized aluminum foil from China is causing or threatening injury to the domestic aluminum foil industry. The ITC petition seeks steep import duties exceeding 140%. The unintended consequences of potential remedies under this investigation, combined with any imposed by the ITC on the ability for flexible packaging manufacturers to get the aluminum necessary to create innovative and functional products for food, beverages, candy, and pharmaceuticals, would be the loss of flexible packaging manufacturing jobs in the United States. Aluminum foil is used by the aluminum foil that is used by the flexible packaging industry is simply not manufactured in the quality and quantities needed in the United States. Failure to invest and quality lapses, including gauge, width, and lack of appropriate alloys, contribute to the fact that U.S. producers of aluminum foil are not able to serve the U.S. flexible packaging industry. In fact, at the ITC's preliminary hearing on March 30th, the staff found that domestic ultra-thin foil production may be limited or non-existent. The ITC also found that despite the Aluminum Association's arguments about economic harm by imports, domestic aluminum foil manufacturing jobs declined by only 137 workers from the period of 2014 to 16. To put this number in perspective, again, the domestic flexible packaging manufacturing jobs in the United States are over 80,000. The negative impact on American jobs cutting off the supply of aluminum foil for flexible packaging will far outweigh any job benefits that are envisioned by the ITC or Section 232 investigations. High tariffs or quotas will only lead to U.S. companies sourcing aluminum foil from other non-U.S. manufacturers, Chinese suppliers of printed or otherwise converted aluminum foil entering the U.S. market, since these products will not be part of the actions, and/or U.S. companies moving flexible foil manufacturing outside the United States altogether. There is simply no scenario where U.S. aluminum foil manufacturers benefit, and in most cases, U.S. flexible packaging jobs will be lost. FPA shares the same goal as the domestic aluminum foil producers who want more American jobs. We understand the importance of national security. We believe that the administration should find ways to work together to improve our country's competitiveness. We believe that everybody loses in unfair trade cases, particularly the American consumer. The ITC's preliminary findings make it clear that their case is not going to result in any benefit to the aluminum foil producers, and the unintended consequences of including aluminum foil in any remedy under this investigation will be more damaging to the U.S. manufacturing industry and the economy than the benefits sought. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Secretary Ross and panel, for inviting me to speak today. My name is Robert Lauterbach, and I'm the Vice President of Global Sourcing at Ball Corporation. Today, I'm testifying on behalf of the Can Manufacturers Institute, CMI, whose member companies, including Ball Corporation, produce over 90 billion aluminum beverage cans every year, create $11 billion in economic activity, and employ 10,000 individuals in 23 states. In order to make the products that we sell, we must purchase very large quantities of aluminum can sheet and aluminum ingot. The names of these products, along with their corresponding HTS codes, have been provided in our submissions. We respectfully request that Commerce exclude the aluminum products that we purchase from any upcoming trade action. To assist Commerce in your analysis, we offer the following reasons. Number one, the aluminum products that we purchase do not have any defense applications. Number two, the aluminum can sheet producers have been and continue to shift their production away from aluminum can sheet that we purchase to higher margin, higher value-added products, such as those used by the automobile industries. As such, can buyers like us are forced to qualify other sources outside the U.S. This is blameless trade. Number three, even still, we purchase the vast majority of our can sheet from the U.S., or in the case of aluminum ingot, from longtime strategic allies such as Canada. In fact, only 2% of the aluminum products that we import into the U.S. come from China. Consider, on the other hand, the products that are being imported from China into the U.S. in large quantities are lower value-added commodity products, such as aluminum foil for food, aluminum fin stock for the HVAC industry, and building and construction aluminum. Number four, imposing tariffs on the aluminum products that we purchase would have the unintended consequence of harming U.S. can-based manufacturers while benefiting foreign can sheet companies doing business in the U.S. Let me explain. 3 of the 4 major suppliers of aluminum can sheet in the U.S. are foreign-owned: Novelis, Constellium, and Trieros. We heard from them earlier. Tariffs will raise their prices, increase their profits, but will not make the U.S. aluminum industry any stronger. Number 5, bauxite, the most important ore of aluminum, is not mined in the U.S. And because of high energy costs and low concentrations of bauxite in U.S. soil, it will not be mined in the U.S., even with a tariff on imported aluminum. Number 6, the importation of bauxite, alumina, and aluminum products we purchase is properly characterized as blameless trade, and it would be unfair to punish U.S.-based companies who depend on such blameless trade. So we ask, why the decline in U.S. primary aluminum production? It really boils down to 3 major reasons: high U.S. energy prices relative to other regions, lack of investments in U.S. smelting assets, and an exponential increase in domestic aluminum scrap availability, making the need for primary aluminum less. Number 7, trade action proposed would likely result in the loss of high-paying can manufacturing jobs and compromise the competitiveness of U.S. downstream aluminum users. Number 8, trade remedies would have the chilling effect of investments on our industry. Over the last 5 years alone, CMI companies have invested well over $1 billion in their U.S. manufacturing facilities. Even small tariffs will result in greater uncertainty about prices, supply, financing, and would dramatically curtail investment in hiring in the U.S. And number 9, finally, a tariff on aluminum products would have a twofold impact. First, consumers would pay more, ultimately harming the U.S. consumers that rely on affordable canned products. And second, our products would be unfairly taxed, making cans less competitive when compared to competing packaging substrates such as plastic and glass. With these concerns in mind, we respectfully request that Commerce exempt the aluminum products that we purchase from any tariff or trade remedy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Questions? Thank you. We're ready for our next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Jim McGreevy. I'm the President and CEO of the Beer Institute. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the U.S. beer industry's views on the department's investigation. I speak on behalf of the beer industry, which represents 1.9% of the nation's gross domestic product, and the direct, indirect, and induced jobs of 2.23 million Americans. The Brewers Association and the American Beverage Association join us in our written comments. A majority of the volume of beer sold in the U.S. is packaged in aluminum cans and aluminum bottles made from aluminum can sheet. While 98% of our can sheet is domestic, imported primary aluminum is an essential input. Tariffs or other measures limiting the importation of primary aluminum or can sheet will hurt our economic activities and the jobs our industry supports. Imports of primary aluminum for can sheet manufacturing do not threaten U.S. national security. U.S. smelters and reliable U.S. trading partners can satisfy the military's demand. The competitive challenges U.S. smelters face are the result of factors unrelated to imports: aging facilities, high energy costs, and a strong U.S. dollar. We urge the Secretary not to impose any tariffs or restrictions on imported can sheet, primary aluminum, or ingot. The Department has trade remedy tools that it can use in a targeted manner to address unfair trade practices, as it did in its recent scope determination concerning Chinese aluminum pallets and its recently initiated investigation of aluminum foil imports from China. We urge the Secretary to recommend the continued use of such targeted actions consistent with U.S. trade remedy laws and regulations and with our international commitments. We also urge the Secretary to consider that energy costs are a key factor driving smelter competitiveness. The U.S. producers are at a severe energy cost disadvantage relative to their foreign competitors. Lower energy costs help smelters and may encourage investment in the U.S. rather than in other countries. Today, I would like to speak to another issue that should be part of the Department's inquiry and is of great concern to the beer industry: serious irregularities in the trading of primary aluminum contracts and in the storage of aluminum at warehouses approved by the London Metals Exchange. These irregularities seriously distorted the aluminum market and cost aluminum users billions of dollars. Aluminum producers themselves have some responsibility for current market conditions by taking incentives from London Metal Exchange warehouse owners to funnel aluminum away from the market. Today, U.S. producers have taken production offshore by investing in building smelters to reduce their cost of production here in the U.S. at the expense of American jobs. In November 2014, the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations issued a report that found, quote, troubling issues involving conflicts of interest, market distortions, and the potential to gain unfair trading advantages, which likely added billions of dollars in costs to a wide range of aluminum users, from beer makers to car manufacturers to defense companies that make warships for the Navy. Though the London Metal Exchange enacted reforms that resulted in significant market corrections, irregularities and distortions of the market may not be over. We've recently seen price movements that appear disconnected from market fundamentals. There are two reasons I raise this. First, as the Secretary considers whether to recommend import adjustments, keep in mind the negative impact that restrictions on supply of primary aluminum will have on our industry and that of other aluminum users. We just exited a period when artificial restrictions in the market distorted prices and hurt aluminum users. Import restrictions would likely have the same effect, leading to higher costs and in turn lost sales. Second, high aluminum prices coupled with a strong U.S. dollar make the U.S. market attractive to global aluminum suppliers, incentivizing additional imports. If the concern is imports of primary aluminum, it is critical to evaluate the role aluminum price irregularities and distortions played in creating the current situation. While imports of primary aluminum for can sheet do not threaten U.S. national security, there are actions the Secretary should recommend to the President to facilitate a functioning aluminum market. 1, further scrutiny of aluminum price irregularities and distortions, policy changes focused on lowering energy costs for smelters, and 3, no restrictions on can sheet or its imports. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Thank you.
Members of the panel, I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Matt Abood, and I am the president of Hydro Aluminum Metals USA, with offices in Baltimore, Maryland. Hydro is a global aluminum company with production, sales, and trading activities throughout the value chain, from bauxite to alumina, energy generation, to the production of primary aluminum and rolled products, as well as recycling. Headquartered in Norway, the company has 13,000 employees involved in activities in more than 40 countries. In the U.S., Hydro is a supplier of rolled aluminum and other metal products. The company has 2 dedicated aluminum remelting facilities in Henderson, Kentucky, and Commerce, Texas. In addition, we operate a technology center in Zeeland, Michigan, where we are conducting research to find and improve advanced solutions for aluminum and our end markets. Hydro has serious concerns regarding the distortion of trade flows resulting from overcapacities in the aluminum market caused by state interventions. Therefore, we welcome all evidence-based inquiries into the current situation faced by the aluminum industry. We agree that the crisis caused by overcapacity requires decisive government reaction. However, we are concerned that the potential trade remedies resulting from a 232 investigation, namely duties, tariffs, and quotas, do not effectively address the fundamental cause of today's situation, which is overcapacity in the primary aluminum industry stemming from practices which are not compliant with international trade law. This, coupled with the fact that the U.S. is a deficit market and rely on imports to supply the annual demand for primary aluminum, we urge the department great caution. Many in this room would agree that the tools afforded to the President as a result of the 232 investigation are far from perfect or appropriate. Unfortunately, there is no substitute for free and fair trade based on a level playing field, and it is our opinion that we shouldn't try to distort the market back into compliance. That being said, we are all hopeful that if a trade remedy is chosen, there will be minimal unintended consequences for the integrated U.S. aluminum supply chain. The aluminum industries in Europe, the U.S., and Canada are interlinked, adding value to our societies as a whole and strengthening national security in the U.S. Tariffs or quotas imposed on European or Canadian aluminum would therefore be examples of such unintended consequences. Both Canada and Europe have been long-standing commercial and military partners of the U.S. and are characterized by strong market economies and legal systems. The Canadian and European aluminum industry stand in fair competition to each other and to their American counterparts, and they do not pursue any unfair trading practices. Therefore, we would like to kindly request the Department of Commerce to exclude Canadian and European imports from the scope of any potential trade remedies. We continue to believe that the best course for our industry is to continue working with our global trading partners and national trade associations to find a negotiated solution. The request in March of 2017 to the G20 countries from the aluminum associations of the U.S., Canada, and Europe to handle the overcapacity is one such forum. Another route is utilizing the WTO dispute settlement system like the US's WTO complaint against the alleged Chinese subsidies to primary aluminum production launched on the 12th of January this year. The WTO dispute settlement mechanism is based on clearly defined and accepted rules and will not cause market distortions. While maybe not everyone in the room agrees that aluminum is a matter of national security, I think almost all would agree that a healthy and well-functioning aluminum industry is in our national best interest. As such, we in the U.S. must stand together with our colleagues in government and those throughout the globe who play by the rules to ensure no further harm is done to our great industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Has Hydro seen any impact on any of its operations from the Chinese overcapacity?
The major impact that Hydro has seen has been through our downstream joint venture in Sapa Extrusions. Sapa Extrusions is the world's largest extrusion company, and I believe you'll hear in just a moment from the head of the Aluminum Extruders Council, who can comment very directly on the impact that has happened in the overcapacities on the downstream side. But certainly there has been quite a bit of market distortion throughout the world.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to testify before the panel. My name is Garney Scott. I'm the president and CEO of Scepter, Inc. My company is primarily engaged in the recycled aluminum market. I'm here today in my capacity as chairman of the Aluminum Association, a position I've been privileged to hold since October 2015. The Aluminum Association represents the entire aluminum value chain, from primary producers to recyclers to fabricators and their suppliers. Our members employ 161,000 workers and have manufacturing operations in 35 states, and account for 70% of the aluminum and aluminum products shipped in North America, and creating $186 billion in economic activity. The domestic industry remains a leader in innovative aluminum technologies and applications, but it is at a juncture will either be able to take advantage of growth opportunities or will continue to be irreparably injured by unfair trade practices that undermine its ability to do so. Our industry has been hurt, and its future is threatened by global oversupply. More specifically, the U.S. industry is being harmed by massive Chinese overcapacity resulting from substantial subsidies by the government of China, such that China's capacity now far exceeds its domestic demand. China's huge and growing aluminum oversupply has distorted the world market and adversely impacted U.S. producers of both primary and downstream products. Chinese oversupply has put severe downward pressure on world prices, which in turn has resulted in the shuttering of U.S. aluminum smelters and semi-fabricating facilities. We have major concerns about China's rapid and aggressive expansion into value-added downstream products and their history of circumvention of U.S. duties through misclassification and/or transshipment through third countries. To bring its production into line with domestic needs and not to export its oversupply, China needs to eliminate market-distorting policies and close or idle at least 2 million metric tons of smelter and semi-finished product annual capacity. The trends in Chinese capacity, production, and exports have enormous negative impacts on the U.S. industry and have adversely affected the industry that is a vital component of our U.S. defense industrial base. In order for the U.S. aluminum industry to supply these defense needs and continue to provide jobs in our communities, we need to be competitive and economically healthy. Absent actions that ensure robust and healthy commercial markets in the United States for aluminum and aluminum products, domestic producers will not be able to sustain their mills and facilities that also produce aluminum products that are vital for defense applications. Think of it this way. The North American aluminum producers ship about 26 billion pounds per year. Perhaps 1 to 1.5 billion pounds of this metal is shipped for defense applications, about 5%. There is no way to sustain a viable industry on these volumes alone, and no plant makes exclusively for military applications. So if we do not address the Chinese overcapacity issue, our entire commercial market may not be viable to the U.S. and will be completely at the mercy of global producers for its defense needs. The U.S. aluminum industry embraces competition that is fair and transparent. We believe that it is vital to the Chinese government to address the negative effects of the long-running rampant overcapacity in both the primary and downstream sectors by closing smelters and semi-fabricating mills until demand can meet supply. This includes, at a minimum, forcing inefficient, unpermitted, and antiquated facilities to close in China, and to pursue policies that align with its own stated sustainable development goals and eliminate Chinese subsidies and Chinese lending and other incentives that artificially support the Chinese aluminum industry and its resulting pricing practices that negatively affect world markets through its exporting of aluminum. A 232 remedy should address the negative impacts of Chinese overcapacity in the United States and help protect an industry that is vital to the country's national and economic security. U.S. border measures will not fully address the problems we face because the domestic industry competes globally and has international supply chains. Unless a broader agreement is negotiated to reduce and eliminate the massive overcapacity in China, the negative effects will persist and continue to threaten the U.S. industry's long-term health and vibrancy. Thank you to the panel. We appreciate your focus on our industry.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Steve Casey, Senior Director of Procurement for Beamis Company Incorporated. Beamis, a manufacturing of packaging headquartered in Neenah, Wisconsin, believes it has a useful perspective to provide to the Secretary of Commerce and the Department of Commerce as they develop their analysis and recommendations for the President pursuant to the Section 232 National Security Investigation of aluminum imports. Beamis is concerned that potential measures resulting from the aluminum investigation could inadvertently have a negative impact on the supply of aluminum foil used in manufacturing flexible packaging in the United States, with potentially negative consequences for Beamis customers, competitive position, and employment. Any import restrictions on aluminum foil, and especially the ultra-thin foil used in flexible packaging, could negatively affect our business in the United States, given that, one, there is not adequate capacity in the United States and Canada to meet our quantitative and qualitative needs, and two, our products compete with imported packaging that would not be covered by any measure impacting foil imports. Accordingly, Beamis respectfully submits that aluminum foil should be excluded from any eventual measures recommended to the President pursuant to the investigation of national security effects of aluminum imports. Beamis manufactures packaging for the largest food, consumer products, and medical device companies in the world. Though we are not a household name, our products are found in virtually every aisle of the grocery store. Our products keep the food you buy safe and fresh through distribution and keep patients safe during surgery. We have 59 facilities in 12 countries and about 17,500 employees worldwide. Within the United States, Beamis has 31 manufacturing plants in 14 states and almost 9,000 employees, 5,000 of those in Wisconsin. The states with the largest number of Beamis employees are Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. As a core part of its packaging business, Beamis uses aluminum foil for barrier to protect the food and medical supplies that go into our packaging. Without aluminum foil, many food and medical products would be less safe and subject to higher waste through distribution. While Beamis sources a large percentage of its aluminum in the United States, there is only one domestic producer of converter foil, and that firm's entire capacity is not enough to supply Beamis' annual requirements. In addition, a large portion of Beamis' foil requirements are for ultra-thin foil of gauges less than 0.0003 inches thick. Such ultra-thin foil is used for applications like ketchup packages, cream cheese packaging, powdered food and beverages, and medical device packages. Beamis customers such as Kraft Heinz, McCormick, and Becton Dickinson require this thin converter foil but U.S. foil producers do not want or are unable to make gauges under 0003 inches. As such, Beamis has been required to source this key material from offshore suppliers. Beamis operates in a highly competitive domestic and international market. Many of Beamis aluminum foil containing products compete with suppliers of packaging from outside the U.S. Increased prices or quotas for aluminum foil will open the door for imports of finished packaging, resulting in a loss of market share, profitability, and ultimately employment. Packaging foil is not made from military-grade, high-purity aluminum. We are not aware of any significant defense production needs for aluminum foil, packaging foil. The only military application we have identified for aluminum packaging foil is for meals ready to eat, or MREs. However, MREs are typically made with a thicker foil than Beamis uses, which can be easily sourced domestically. Finally, we understand the importance of protecting domestic manufacturers in key industries. To the extent that the Secretary and the Department are concerned about distortions in the aluminum foil market, we note the ongoing trade remedy proceedings before the Department of Commerce and the U.S. International Trade Commission provide an appropriate tool to address any needed corrections. Those proceedings, entailing thorough, factual market research and analysis, are at a preliminary stage. Allowing the proceedings to run their course will allow consumers time to adjust. The present Section 232 investigation should not be used to restrict imports of aluminum foil for commercial uses, as the result would be grave economic consequences to the domestic manufacturing facilities of Beamis, other packaging producers, and our customers, with no increase in defense security. Thank you. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. You did say that Beamis sources a large percentage of its aluminum in the United States, but the one supplier can't meet all the demands or the Beamis's needs, and then you go on to say, but a large portion of the ultra-thin foil is not available in the United States. Can you give us a sense of the proportion of those two categories?
Yes, so we source the vast majority of our foil that's over 0003 domestically. The foil that's under 0003, we have to import the majority of that because it's not available. And it's about 25 to 30% that's above 0003, and the balance would be below 0003.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
So where do you import the thin? Where do you import the very thin, ultra-thin?
The ultra-thin, a significant portion does come from China. We can import from Europe as well as other Asian countries. As the trade remedy proceedings are taking place, we have been investigating alternate sources, and honestly, we are struggling to find enough capacity to meet all of our needs outside of China.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. We're ready for the next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Jorge Vasquez. I'm founder and managing director of Harbor Aluminum Intelligence. Harbor is an independent, privately owned research firm based in Austin, Texas, that specializes in the analysis of the global aluminum industry and its various markets. My testimony will be factual. Over 98% of the aluminum products the U.S. consumed in 2016 were produced here in the United States. By aluminum products, I mean mill products and castings. Actually, net U.S. imports of aluminum products have declined in the last 10 years, both in absolute and in relative terms. This explains why net exports of aluminum products to NAFTA partners have more than tripled in the last 10 years to 690,000 tons. In fact, the U.S. is a net exporter of can sheet to the world. Contrary to what many may imagine, the U.S. has had for many years an aluminum trade surplus with China. The U.S. exports more aluminum scrap units to China than the flat roll products the U.S. imports from China. Although this trade surplus still exists today, it has deteriorated in the last 10 years. U.S. military demand for aluminum products is more than 99% sourced from U.S. producers. In fact, domestic production is about 40 times larger than U.S. military aluminum demand volumes. With respect to high purity aluminum, U.S. production is essentially 3 times larger than what the U.S. military consumes every year. Moreover, existing U.S. high purity inventories can cover almost 2 years of U.S. military consumption. What if U.S. production of high purity aluminum were ceased to exist? Well, the U.S. military could alone produce its entire needs using fractional crystallization technology, which is readily available in the U.S. and currently operates at commercial levels. Has China overproduced primary aluminum and caused U.S. smelters to close? Honestly, evidence doesn't support this notion. Consider these 4 facts. U.S. smelting production had already declined 40% by the time China's primary aluminum production and consumption started to take off in 2002. Average cash profit margins for smelters outside China have been higher in the last 12 years than in the prior 12 years when China's primary aluminum production and consumption took off. China's total primary aluminum stocks today equate to approximately 4 weeks of consumption versus 30 weeks of consumption outside China. And China doesn't export primary aluminum. Please note that U.S. primary aluminum production has been declining since 1980. This is several decades before the Middle East and China became relevant primary aluminum producers. U.S. primary aluminum production has experienced an organic long-term decline as a result of an exponential increase in domestic aluminum scrap availability, high electricity prices relative to other developing countries, lack of investment in smelting assets, and a long-term decline in aluminum consumption per capita. Moreover, this decline has been particularly driven in the last 5 years by a strong rally in the US dollar, which appreciated around 20% over this period. It is technically clear to me that growing US primary aluminum imports have been a natural economic effect of the gradual long-term decline in uncompetitive US primary aluminum production, not vice versa. Declining US primary aluminum production is part of an organic maturity process where the US economy and aluminum industry have moved away from low-value, energy-intensive, and less competitive industrial segments to more profitable and energy-efficient sectors, just like it has happened in other developed countries like Germany, Japan, and the UK. It is my technical view that exports of value-add US aluminum products like can sheet, extrusions, and foil would decline in a significant way if the US were to impose any type of restriction or duty on primary aluminum that ends up in impacting prices. Lastly, my analysis of physical transactions in the US is leading me to believe that an artificial increase in the Midwest premium may have artificially attracted more primary aluminum imports than otherwise may have occurred. I can gladly share this analysis upon request. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the panel? Thank you for your testimony. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Charles Ketting. I'm the owner of SEO Metals in Fort Worth, Texas. SECO has been in business since 1983, and we manufacture aluminum pellet from primary aluminum only, which is used by major chemical companies and to alloy metals. SECO produces aluminum products in purity grades up to 99.998% pure. The U.S. smelters can only produce purity as high as 99.98, which is 10% less. And that metal is not available to SECO from downstream downstream producers. In fact, SECO is the only approved supplier of high purity aluminum used in the domestic manufacture of titanium alloys made for aerospace and military application. An average of 70% of our production is sold domestically, 9% is sold into China, and 20% into other foreign countries. We buy no aluminum from China, and they sell no primary aluminum into the U.S. Cost of aluminum production in the United States is higher than anywhere else in the world. This is primarily due to the cost of energy, which is 38% of the cost of total aluminum production. Aluminum can be produced in Canada for approximately 12 cents per pound less than in the United States because of lower power cost. Other countries have similar advantages over us. In the year 2000, there were 21 operating smelters in the U.S. Today, there are only 5 smelters owned by 2 companies, only 2 smelters of which are at capacity. The average age of those smelters is 44 years versus less than 10 years for those in Asia and the Middle East. The U.S. smelters are operating with a distinct disadvantage because of their old facilities and higher cost of electricity. The U.S. has a large downstream aluminum industry, which is at least 10 times larger than the smelting industry and which creates a vastly greater number of jobs, and I belong to that. It will become less competitive and lose many more jobs than the smelters currently have, with higher costs imposed by any tariff. SECO imports high-purity aluminum from over 10 suppliers across the globe. A tariff will affect the prices of material that cannot even be produced in the United States. The cost for aluminum in supplier and customer contracts written in the U.S. is based on daily published indexes. Costs move up and down with the market. There has never been a tariff on primary aluminum in the U.S., and therefore contracts do not anticipate tariffs. If a tariff is passed, it will cause havoc in the market. For instance, at SECO, we buy and sell on the same market, see the chart. Our contracts with our suppliers and customers allow for the price of aluminum to go up and down based on the indexes. This allows us to sign contracts as long as 4 years, since the rise and fall of the aluminum price is covered. We then add a fixed cost per pound to convert the aluminum to pellets. This conversion cost covers our direct costs as well as overhead and profit. If a tariff is imposed, SECO would have to pay it, with no way to recoup it. We have no way in our contract to recoup a tariff. We would soon be bankrupt. Margins are small in this industry, and tariffs could cause the failure of many companies, such as SECO. In 2015, the U.S. military used only 42,000 metric tons of high-purity aluminum. The U.S. production capacity was 192,000 metric tons, of which 75,000 tons were idle. In addition, there were 75,000 metric tons of domestic inventory. This equates to 4.6 times the production capacity, with 1.8 times the inventory of military usage. In conclusion, why on earth do we need any type of tariff on high-purity primary aluminum? To protect 2 companies currently operating in the U.S. who have chosen to stay with outdated facilities in a country with extremely high energy cost, who have 4 times as much capacity as the military needs when we have 1.8 years of inventory, when a tariff would create havoc in the downstream market, causing downstream producers to be less competitive, cause bankruptcies, and cause a higher loss of jobs than any tariff purports to protect. Why do we want to protect all of this when aluminum purities are available in many countries throughout the world? Will we no longer have allies such as Canada the source of 63% of U.S. aluminum imports? Is our military all at once going to go to war with every country in the world that has aluminum producers? I don't think so. I am strongly opposed to any tariffs to adjust primary aluminum imports because such tariffs are totally and completely unnecessary.
Thank you for your testimony. The high purity that SECO produces, is that a result of SECO's processes, or is that really a result of the high purity primary it imports?
I'm sorry, I don't hear very well. What did you say?
So you said that SECO produces the highest purity aluminum. U.S. companies don't produce that. You're importing aluminum as part of your process. Is the high purity that SECO is producing as a result of what you're importing or a result of what SECO does with the imported?
It's both. We import the high purity aluminum that's not available in the United States. We can't get the high purity that we need from the United States, so we import it and then we convert it. And it took us 3 years to develop a process that would keep the purity in that aluminum at its high level when it runs through every part of our plant without picking up any contaminants at all.
I see. Thank you. Other questions? Thank you. Last but not least, Mr. Henderson.
Good afternoon. I am Jeff Henderson, President of the Aluminum Extruders Council, the AEC. The AEC has over 100 U.S. members that are manufacturers of aluminum extrusions. Our members and their suppliers employ over 35,000 workers directly and nearly 100,000 indirectly in hundreds of plants spread over 35 states. We applaud the administration's initiation of this investigation, as it recognizes the extreme importance of the U.S. aluminum industry and its workers to the national security of the United States. In this investigation, aluminum should be defined to include both primary aluminum and semi-fabricated aluminum items. Indeed, aluminum is produced on a continuum. At one end are the producers of primary or unwrought aluminum, mainly in the form of ingot. Primary aluminum is intended almost exclusively for further processing into a semi-fabricated form, such as sheet, foil, plate, and extrusions, all of which fall on the other end of the production continuum. The threshold question in this investigation is whether aluminum is critical to U.S. national security. The answer is yes. Numerous finished products made with aluminum are critical to the U.S. defense industrial base, which we will address in more detail in our written submission. Indeed, not only is a thriving aluminum industry critical to our nation's national security, certain foreign industrial policies pose a significant threat to the U.S. aluminum industry. This is particularly the case with China and more recently, Malaysia and Vietnam. While aluminum's defense applications are extremely important, protecting that segment of the market alone is not sufficient on its own to ensure the continuation of a viable U.S. aluminum industry which is ready to meet full wartime demand. Rather, the entire U.S. aluminum production continuum must be protected to prevent further weakening of this critical industry. So what is required to protect the U.S. aluminum industry? Well, first, you must understand the aluminum crisis. The crisis confronting the U.S. aluminum industry is China, plain and simple. As with other critical industrial sectors, China's aluminum strategy is to continue to build production capacity and employ tens of thousands of excess workers by artificially increasing aluminum output. China uses massive subsidies and other protectionist policies to accomplish these market-distorting objectives. Unless President Trump and this administration take decisive action and corrective action, the U.S. aluminum industry's ability to continue producing defense and other critical infrastructure items may be set back permanently or destroyed. The U.S. aluminum industry has paid the price for China's self-interested policies, as has our national security. 7 years ago, the AEC led the charge in bringing anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases against Chinese aluminum extrusions. Since imposition of the orders, however, the Chinese have worked overtime devising multiple transshipment and other evasion schemes to avoid the duties. For example, the Chinese have greatly increased their exports of extrusions to Vietnam. Since 2011, these exports increased by almost 4,000%. During that same period, exports to the United States from Vietnam have increased by close to 8,000%. Similar trends are occurring in Malaysia and other Southeast Asian countries. China's practices have had a devastating impact on the U.S. aluminum industry as they have fundamentally distorted the U.S. market. Let me highlight how the AEC believes that the administration should address the aluminum crisis. Key to our recommendations is that the administration must ensure that its actions do not reinforce or exacerbate the existing distortive Chinese policies. As such, the AEC does not support the imposition of tariffs or other restrictions on the imports of primary aluminum, as that will simply support China's aluminum policy goals, especially since China does not even export primary aluminum. Imposing tariffs on primary aluminum would adversely impact the ability of U.S. semi-fabricated producers, including AEC's members and their customers, to compete against imports of their products from other countries, including China's transshipped semi-fabricated products. The administration should instead seek to restore the economic viability of the U.S. aluminum primary industry in a holistic fashion by addressing the underlying regulatory environment that has made the primary industry increasingly less competitive. To the extent the administration determines that tariffs or other restrictions on imports of primary aluminum are necessary, it should ensure that U.S. producers of semi-fabricated products, including extrusions, are not negatively impacted. Regarding extrusions, the administration should impose duties on aluminum extrusions from countries that are allowing China to evade the department's orders. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Thank you. Well, that concludes all of our scheduled speakers. So I want to thank the speakers for taking the time to come and give us their presentations, the panel members, and also those of you in the audience who have attended. Yeah, and remember, the comment period will remain open until tomorrow. So if there are some that have not yet submitted written comments for the record in this investigation, you have until tomorrow to do so. Thank you again, and the hearing is concluded.